Top five.
Yeah, girl, you ready to do this? You ready to count this thing down? We're doing the top five, her. Yeah, let's set it off with 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Ranked Top 5, list of stuff that don't matter. I'm your host, Tuong La, and welcome to the year 2025? 2020. I had to look at my calendar just to make sure. What is time anymore? Welcome back to Ranked, everyone. And as always, we always start with a bang for the very first episode of the year and our final one of these for Ranked history. We did it, guys. With me, as always, we have Angus, MacDonald, Mathew Whalley, and Ethan Howieson for our Game of the Year episode.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hello.
Let's go.
Hello. As always, excluding 2017.
Angus will never let that go.
I'll never let it
you
go.
Shouldn't. You shouldn't. That was a mistake. We should go back and do 17 again. Was it 16 or 17?
This is 2017.
Yeah.
If Ranked went on for another 200 episodes, I think it would be way more fun to go back and retroactively pick a year, be like, okay, 2008, and we do Game of the Year for 2008.
Oh,
now
yeah.
with so much hindsight, you know,
and we
feel
would play those games again. We would have to.
Sure.
That'd
Or
be
just
cool.
go rose tinted goggles.
I am so excited for this episode. I always am. This is like the episode that I look forward to every single year because it is a big excuse for me to play video games and pretend that I'm getting paid for it. I mean, no, sorry, I am getting paid for it. That's right. We've established in the pod cavern before that we've got paid in NFTs and crypto for Ranked. Unfortunately, that whole system has crashed. Crypto and NFTs no longer popular, apparently. So that is why this is the final one of these episodes.
Yeah.
The rug was pulled out from underneath us.
I got
Twa coin did not work out for us.
I've never heard anyone say it that Hoktwa.
Oh my gosh.
We got pumped and dumped.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And anyways, I'm very excited to have this crew back together to talk about this year's games. Before we talk, like this episode's always like we get into the dirty, the weeds of all the games that we played this year, and we'll do our best not to, spoil like the stories and stuff like that. If there's some sort of big spoiler, we'll let you know in advance. We'll try. But yeah, you might know that like we usually put these episodes out a little later than other websites. And as we always establish, our list is way more important and we do the research over the holidays, which is why this is the correct episode to listen to and the correct list to pay attention to when it comes to games of the year. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think if like, say like, I don't know, like an outlet like the Game Awards, if they pick the same, if they, because like I think a couple of years it's lined up, and I would say that's always just been a coincidence.
I think we're actually contractually obligated to come out after the Game Awards, so we don't color their opinions.
Jeff Keighley would come after us for sure.
He left me a very nasty voicemail. He was crying a lot. It was sad. But he was
Jeff.
You could tell there was a lot of snot.
He kept saying "pwitty please."
Yeah, and then he kept saying how Statler and Waldorf actually hurt his feelings during the Game Awards.
He kept asking me if I have Kojima's phone number because Kojima gave him a fake phone number, and I'm like, buddy, I can't give you that number.
Well, look, so in the year of 2024. Lots happened in the game industry. I usually like to do a quick highlight of the quick stories that came out. Last year, it was one of those years where we're like, oh, this is one of the best years in gaming in so long, except there's been so many layoffs and terrible things happening to the people making the art and games that we love. And we're hoping that 2024 would be different. But unfortunately, it wasn't. I think it was worse, actually. Yeah. Number-wise, more people got laid off, which is a shame, and it's just such a sad thing because we love games so much on this call, and there was a lot of good games this year too, and I feel like a lot of I mean, it's just so weird for games this year because it was like there was some heavy hitters this year for AAA games, not a lot in the middle, and a lot of like smaller games too.
It was also the first quadruple A game this year.
Was that? Oh wait, is that a spoiler?
No, Ubisoft's Pirates game.
Oh,
that was advertised as the first quadruple A game.
Skull and Bones.
Oh, Skull and Bones. Oh my gosh.
Which obviously, I think actually that's a good point in that this year also is a bit of a turning point where some pretty big air quotes big games flopped.
Yeah,
like people
huge
games that were meant to make they were, and I think that's what people could sniff it out. The insincerity, what's the best way to put this? Just how
the capitalistic exploitation.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. And it's just like I'll save it in case anyone nominates Concord. But
best week of my life.
First nomination, yeah.
God, just like seeing the trailer, and I've felt very in tune with the rest of the gaming community across the globe, where I saw that first Concord trailer and was like, oh, this looks kind of cool. And then the two talking head guys come on and they're like, Concord is a PvP hero shooter, and I immediately lost interest, and I could feel all my brothers and sisters and non-binary people around the world, all these gamers just being like, at the same time, it's like a million times split screen of all of us just being like, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good. I don't want to play.
Well, honestly, that was one of the biggest gaming stories of the year. And we don't have to like talk about it for too long, but it is like one of those things that was in development for so long. And then like within days it got pulled. And then they're like, well, what are we going to do with this thing? Turns out nothing. Turns out nothing. They're just like, they just cut their losses after all of that. And that's kind of unheard of, especially coming out of like Sony. Yeah. A few other quick stories here. We didn't get a Switch 2 this year. We thought we would. We didn't. We got a PS5 Pro instead, which I don't know anyone who bought that.
I can't see the difference. I really can't.
Yeah, they're telling me, and I'm like, yeah, sure. The crowds in the background look way sharper, I guess.
Yeah.
And
those background crowds.
Oh, yeah. And
which is the most important thing, really.
Yeah.
Totally. And I think like the last thing I'll bring up here is actually two things. One is something to look out after is that Disney invested a ton of money into Epic Games this year. So we're going to probably see something out of that in the next few years. They put $1.5 billion into Epic Games. Which is like, whoa, what are you doing with that?
What a horse to hitch your wagon to. Epic Games?
Yeah.
The thing that's been on like a steady decline?
Well, except for Fortnite.
Except
right?
for Fortnite.
Except for Fortnite.
Yeah.
Fortnite seems to be expanding out into its own kind of platform, right? Where it's like now there's a Fortnite racing game and a Fortnite first-person shooter and a Fortnite Lego game.
And
so
Rock
I imagine
Band game too.
Is there really?
Yeah.
I feel like there's just going to be like a Fortnite Disney game, like maybe not Marvel, but like Disney, like you know, like
Yeah. What do you think if it was like Disney PvE hero shooter?
Ooh.
Oh, that'd be. I would
PvE.
PvE.
Me and Goofy back to back, just fighting,
That's
like,
what I'm
gunning
saying.
down.
Yeah,
Like
the
Kingdom Hearts
unique
style?
kill animation for when Mickey just puts a Glock to Minnie's head.
Jeez. And then shoots a Kamehameha afterwards for some reason.
And then he
Before skibbity toileting away.
Oh my god, I hate that word.
You are a boomer.
Yeah,
You're a boomer
that's
just
true.
like us.
now
And
who's old?
the last story, R.I.P. Akira Toriyama. I think that was it's worth mentioning.
Yeah,
He
RIP.
is a legendary manga artist who created one of the most popular animes of all time, Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Super. And the reason why it's related to gaming is that Akira Toriyama played a big, heavy hand into like early games such as like Chrono Trigger and like Dragon Quest. And so I feel like with those games, people were really like, they really loved those games. And he played such a big part of that. So like RIP to a legend. And in personal news, I feel like last year when we started the show, we're like, oh yeah, Matthew got has a second child. This is great.
Yep.
Angus, when are you going to have a child? And then Angus was like, ha, 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 ha. And then little did we know during the call, like we didn't know this until after. He's just like, by the way, I am having a kid.
Yeah, I think I announced it like right after we finished recording.
Yeah. And to follow that, so Angus has a little bebe now, and I have one on the way. I have to bring up this life announcement because I think this is the first time officially that I'm saying it on the podcast and that people can hear it into the world. So a little bebe tongue is coming into the world.
Wow.
And Ethan, any life news on your end? Are you You don't have to have a kid on the way, but maybe, according to my notes here, you don't have a kid on the way, but you are using kids for cheap labor. This can't be right.
Don't you want to keep that under wraps for now.
Okay.
But no, but my wife is gone. She's gone back to school. She's changing careers.
Amazing.
Oh,
Wow.
She's going to nursing.
a
That's
little
awful.
brain baby.
God, that's so noble.
Yeah.
I went back to school. My wife supported me going back to school, and I went back to school for film and media production.
Hell yeah.
So very, actually, your wife
Let's
is
go.
way more noble than I.
Way more noble. Well, listen, we talked enough about our lives. We talked a little bit about the gaming stories, the hits of this year. I want to talk about the actual games that came out this year that we played. We joked about like getting paid for this. We don't, but I feel like as gamers, we put in the work to, try to play as many games as possible. And we usually put like a Google Sheet down of games we played. And right now there's 33 games on this list that came out this year, and I'm not even sure if that's fully updated. So like,
No, I missed a
think
couple.
we
No.
did pretty fucking good, and I'm very excited to talk about it. So with ground rules, just like every year, we're going to talk about the games that came out in 2024. Just like always, early access games can count if you feel like you got a full gaming experience out of it. This was a huge point of contention this year at the Game Awards, and this has been a ground rule for us for many, many years, which is like DLC counts, but as long as you feel like you got a full gaming experience out of the DLC, if it feels like a full game out of the DLC, but maybe it'll come up today, but there was a game at the Game Awards that everyone, for some reason, was just stomping their feet at, being like, that shouldn't count. But at least in the pod cavern, we've always counted games such as like Monster Hunter Iceborne, and I would equate like cyberpunk, Phantom Liberty in that camp as well.
Yeah.
And anything else you want to go for ground rules here?
No, I think that hits it all. I mean, anything that comes up, I'm sure we'll discuss it, but we'll be pretty cordial and polite, civilized.
This is the last one.
is the
Yeah,
last
we should
one.
go to blows over this.
Yeah, we don't have to be friends after this, Angus.
I will be crying at the end of this. I'll be in tears, and I'll be like,
Jeff Keighley was right.
I bought a copy of Persona 5 this year, so it's new to me. Damn
I'm
it.
glad I wasn't on the 2017 episode
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, let's just get into it. Just like every episode of Ranked, and for the last time ever for the Video Games of the Year episodes, we're going to go around 3 times, nominating 3 nominations each, making a master list of 12 and whittling that down to a top 5 video games of 2024 list. All right. I'll go first. My first nomination. Now, I'll start off by saying that this is my number 1 game of the year. Easily. I'm coming out swinging. I thought I had a very unique perspective of this being my game of the year. But turns out this is everybody's game of the year. No, that's not true. This is the Game Awards game of the year. A lot of people loved it. I feel like in this year in games, it's hard to equate because like last year was such a crazy year for games that we got so many hard hitters. For this year for games, when I was putting together my personal top 10, I felt like there was a lot of pretty good games and few very great games, I guess. But one game like really blew me away this year, and that is Astrobot for the PlayStation 5.
Solid choice.
Yeah.
Guys.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the year of 2017, the one that Angus wasn't on. I don't know if you know that, but that year we had a certain game called Super Mario Odyssey at number 3. Now, for myself personally, my argument that year, I remember it vividly because that was the year that Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild came out. But my number 1 of the year was Super Mario Odyssey. And the reason behind that was because that I found it was such a tight 3D platformer that was just exuding joy. And that is exactly what Astrobot is. It is like Sony's own Mario game that is a really fun platformer, bright, vibrant, performs beautifully, so much personality in it. They're throwing in lots of like fun PlayStation nostalgia in there. Maybe not as much as like Astro's Playroom, the free game that you got on PS5. But speaking of that game, this this is like the expanded version of that free game. This is a full retail version of what Astro's Playroom is. So they add more to it. And I feel like it is just such a tight game that is just so fun. And every time you're going through these levels, and level by level, I was just smiling the entire way through. And in a year that, you know, like we've had some tough years, and I feel like Astrobot is just like, you know what, put that aside for a second. You want a game that's just going to make you happy and enjoy life and forget about the world? Here it is. And something that I really enjoy about Astrobot as a game that puts it differently than something like a Mario, even though they're similar in a lot of ways, but in Astrobot, it is like one of the only games that I can think of that actually make use of the PS5 DualSense controller. When the PS5 came out, the DualSense controller was pitched as a thing that like could potentially change the way we play video games. For people who don't know, it's the regular controller, but there's special like rumble features and haptics and the speaker and microphone on the controller that when you're moving and doing stuff, you get real feedback off of it. So like if you're like moving through sand, the controller is like rumbling in such a way that it feels like you're moving through sand, and they're using motion controls, and you're getting all these like cool abilities in Astrobot that you can implement into the levels themselves, which is different than Mario because, you know, you're not doing that specific stuff. Astrobot is just a joy to play, and I love it very much. What do you guys think?
Great game.
Great game. The note about feeling joy when you play it is exactly how I felt. I looked at my wife this morning because she was asking me about my list and I obviously screamed. I said, "Save it for the cast." But what I did tell her was, I mean, like it's hard to not just nominate Astrobot because it was like of all the games, maybe some of the most fun. It's simple, but I appreciate that. It's there's some like mechanics. I know Matthew and I, we had the briefest conversation about it because we didn't want to spoil it for the cast, but like we both were like gushing over the levels where you use the slow-mo. And just like there's a casino level where an enemy throws these cards at you and you freeze time and then you run up the cards to hit them. And I was just like, that's so fucking cool. And all the boss fights are so good. It's a great game. Solid.
And the music slaps in that game too. Oh, I love it. Yeah. Matthew, Ethan, did you play it?
Absolutely.
The only thing I'll offer to sort of further discussion about Astrobot as a game is you brought up Super Mario Odyssey, and I think that's an important thing to bring up because Mario is kind of like the king of platformers in my mind. I'm sure others would agree. And the reason why Super Mario Odyssey to me was such a compelling platform is because it had so much freedom of movement. There were just so many ways to jump and move Mario around in that game that you truly felt like you were not limited at all in what you could do. Astrobot, on the other hand, you really just had jump and whatever powers were granted to you for that level. While I don't think that was a bad thing for this game, for the next Astrobot incarnation, Astrobot 2, whatever they do, I want to see them open up that platforming because that, I think, is maybe the biggest barrier to this game being upped to all-time status, one of the greatest games of all time, is that while it was a competent platformer in 2024, I don't know if it stands up against the history of platformers.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, we can definitely talk about that later. I do think like Astrobot's movement is a lot different than Mario because he has his like laser hover and that kind of thing. But like what I liked about Astrobot 2 is like the barrier to entry is quite easy for anybody to usually like to come in. But there are levels that, you know, challenge you with the not secret, but like the abilities that you get in those levels. But also the challenge levels I found were the ones that were like, those are the ones that got my heart racing and made me feel like a gamer.
Yeah, my hands were sweaty. Yeah.
Yeah. And like the final level of the game is like, that is the level of like end boss Mario games in those games. And it's just like, okay, I feel challenged as a gamer playing those levels. And then the base game is for everybody in a way, you know?
Yeah, I think, I've got a ton to say about Astrobot. I suppose I could leave it for later, but
we'll get to it.
Totally.
We'll get to it. Angus, what do you got? First nomination.
Let me pull up my Steam. I'm curious. Okay, that's good. So this is probably the game I've played the most of in 2024. I've played almost 300 hours of it on my computer.
Holy shit.
I've played,
I've
probably played 100 hours of it on my phone. I'm going to nominate the incredibly addictive, hard to pronounce Balatro?
I think it's Balatro. I think officially.
Well,
Bele True.
Bele True.
Bela True? Okay. I've heard it's Roman for jester or something like that, which makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Joker, probably.
Yeah.
How to pronounce Balatro?
Bele True.
Okay, this says Balatro. Okay, well, modern Italian. Balatro. That was right. I feel I shouldn't have done that. That felt fucked up. I apologize.
We got a huge Italian demographic on the show.
Oh no, Mario.
Yeah, Mario's coming for you now.
But this game, I think every now and then there are games that kind of have like a ripple effect, and they set some kind of trend, and they're usually in the indie space, because AAA or quadruple A games rarely take risks like this. And I think this is one of those. I think another notable one would be Vampire Survivors. A couple of years ago, we got Vampire Survivors, an incredibly fun, addictive game. And you started seeing, it wasn't the first in that genre, but you started seeing a bunch of people kind of try to innovate in that space. And now there's these all sorts of interesting takes on what a survivor game can be like, with Vampire Survivors leading the charge. I predict that in the next couple of years, or even the next year, we're going to see a bunch of indie deck builder games that kind of maybe push the boundaries of what a deck building game can be, beyond just make a hand of cards and use them to attack and block and stuff like this. And I found Balatro very fun to play, very addictive. And it was one of those ones where pretty much every person I've shown it to has messaged me a couple of days later being like, I've played so much Balatro. And yeah, so it's a fun game. I think it's really innovative, and it's like perfect, like truly, like I got on my computer at noon today because I thought we were recording at noon. Then I checked my messages and saw it was 12:30. So I fired up Balatro and played a couple rounds, won a run even. It was great. So that's just a delightful game I've been playing.
Angus, really
the perfect
quickly,
lunch break game
for the audience at home. What is Balatro?
Sure, that's
an
an excellent point. It's a deck building game where you use poker hands to achieve high scores, basically. So, you're playing poker hands like a straight, a flush, pairs, two pairs, three pairs, four of a kind of thing. But the fun thing is you start with a regular, in most instances, you start with a regular 52 card deck, and then you can add cards to it. You can take cards out of it. You can transform cards. I turned half of my deck into tens, and now I've got a joker. They're joker cards that give you bonuses and stuff like that. Now, every 10 I play, I get an extra, multiplier to my points and kind of thing. It's one of those ones where it was hard to explain sometimes to people, but once they see it, they're like, oh, I get it. It's almost like solitaire in a way too. Like, you're playing by yourself, you're playing against a computer, and as much as it is poker in the hands, you're not really like bluffing or betting or anything like that. It doesn't really have those mechanics, but it uses the structure of poker hands. Yeah, I think that probably just about sums it up. If you're at all curious, look it up. There's a demo for free. Friend of the show, Leslie Cherapy, recommended the demo to me, and he kept being like, dude, you got to play this demo. And I was like, sure, okay. And I tried it, and I was like, oh shit, this is awesome.
And it's a run-based game too.
Yes,
and then you're unlocking more jokers and decks to play as you go. And there's like a zillion challenges you can do, like a crazy value for what you're getting out of it. It's like a $20 game. And crazy.
Truly unlimited replayability.
Yeah. I also really enjoyed Balatro early in the year. I mean, I stopped playing to make room for other games, but it is a nice game to, like, now that it's on mobile and stuff like that, whenever I'm in like a big line, let's say at the grocery store or like Costco or something, I will just take it out for a few minutes and just play it on my phone a little bit and then put it away.
I feel like every year I mention how, probably because I have attention issues, I always I always love having at least one game in a year or that I can play while listening to something. I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, and so this is that game for me. In fact, a really short story, my wife and I, we had an anniversary. Now, an anniversary is when we had an anniversary, and we had this little getaway. We went to this fancy B&B. We ordered dinner. We had desserts. There was a pool we swam in. It was great. And we brought our laptops with us. And the plan was to play Pal World. We were going to play Pal World. My wife and I have been playing Pal World. We brought our laptops so we could play that in the evening. And for some reason, it didn't work. I forget why. I didn't have a local save or something like that. And it didn't work. So I was like, shit. Okay, well, so we sat on the bed and I showed her Balatro. And like 2 runs in, she opened up her laptop and started installing it. And then for the next like 4 hours, we played Balatro and listened to podcasts together, and it was a wonderful evening.
You guys are sickeningly cute.
Thank you.
I was going to say the same thing. Before we continue, Matthew, Ethan, you played Balatro. Any quick thoughts before we go on?
I didn't actually play it at all.
Oh, you didn't play it?
So I'm going to have, nope.
Wow.
So I'm going to be,
Wow.
out of that conversation, really.
Curious,
Except
Ethan,
for a few,
I know you're usually plugged into games. Of course you are, because you have been handpicked by me.
I've been on every podcast except even 2017.
That's exactly it. And you knew that Balatro was in a content. Maybe we can save this till later. I'm not sure how big of an explanation this is.
I think so. That's
okay.
just like,
we'll
save it for when we start doing stuff.
Okay. I'm very curious. I know, Matthew, you liked it as well, right? We can just leave it at that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great game.
Okay, great. I can't wait to see Angus and Ethan fight and maybe cry later. I'm hoping we get a few tears.
I can't yell at Ethan.
Matthew, what do you got? First nomination.
So I might as well start off with the game I played most recently. I was literally trying to finish this game before this podcast, and I succeeded in this attempt. Right down to the wire. The credits were rolling as I paused my game and went upstairs. Metaphor Re Fantasio. It is another RPG or JRPG from Atlas. It is reminiscent of the Persona games. It also has influences from other Atlas titles, which I'm not as familiar with, but I'm told that Atlas just makes good JRPGs, and they kind of just made Metaphor a melting pot of a lot of their ideas.
This is a crazy year for JRPGs, by the way. Was so many this year.
Well, I don't even really know where to start with this game. It had amazing world building, amazing characters. Love the story. I love the mechanics. People who are familiar with JRPGs will be familiar with the grind, which is just kind of a point you reach in all those games where you just have to keep killing enemies to get stronger to sort of move past the next difficulty hurdle. I found this to be the most acceptable grind experience that I've ever had to go through in a JRPG. There were a couple of gripes, but the big thing to keep in mind about this game is that it is the first title in its series. And so a lot of these issues you could attribute to just a budget shortfall where they didn't have enough money to fully realize their idea. But Atlas has already come out and said that this is the first game in what will likely be a series of games. So if this is the baseline they're setting and they're only going to build from here, I'm very excited to see where they go. What do you guys think? Have you had a chance to play it?
I beat it, and I also loved it. It took me a little bit to kind of parse out the differences between a Persona game and this game, especially in the beginning, because there's so many similarities. But as the game goes on, you can see obviously the Atlas influence in how the game is structured, but it is its own thing. There is stuff like social links and that kind of stuff, and you're leveling up personality traits, I guess, or your wisdom, your social stats, and that kind of stuff. So that's similar.
They're called kingly virtues.
You're right.
Please.
But the whole archetype system, which at face value seems like it's just the Persona system but reskinned, is quite different, I found. And you are every party member has different archetypes, and you're leveling up different archetypes for your party members to kind of contribute to the royal archetype for each person as well. And I found just a ton of quality of life changes for JRPGs in general. Things like, if you're so strong to the enemy that you're not going to just go into a battle with them, you can just kill them in the overworld, or you don't even kill them right away. You can kind of have a mini battle with them.
It's a Souls-like.
Sure, yeah.
There's a dodge roll.
There's a dodge roll, and you're hitting square to attack. I found the strategy and combat more engaging than Persona games, honestly. I found as it went on, you're actually using some of the abilities that, when you look at JRPGs and you're like, okay, I'm never going to use the ability where you I don't know, you can repel magic, or you can boost up this thing or that thing. I'm just going to use whatever their weakness is. I'm just going to hit that like Pokemon. But in this game, I felt like they made me use a lot more of those abilities, which I really appreciated. And just things like being able to restart a battle right away. If you're that RNG is bullshit, I'm just going to restart, and then who cares, right? And then by the end of the day, it's a JRPG, so you want the characters to be engaging, and you want to like the story and everything like that. And by the end of it, I was just that was a pretty solid story. The only thing that I have a knock against this game really is I think the main character design looks like a wiener. I can't get over it.
I agree 100%.
Yeah. It's weird that they're like, this is the first Atlas game I've played where they like expressly say that the main character is like he's 18, but I'm like, why does he still look like a baby then?
I hate his design.
Maybe
His weird
there's some
headband
explanation.
thing, his like weird like tote bag that he carries around.
His satchel?
His
Yeah.
satchel that he carries around.
Got like a
with him.
Burberry trench coat. Like, what's that about, man?
I have also played a decent amount. Oh no, I've been playing this game. It's been hard to play games with a baby, but this is one of the ones that I specifically like made time for on my Christmas break and stuff like that. I'm about like 25 hours in, so I'm still got a ways to go. I think it's really neat. I think there's a lot of really cool things. There's a couple gripes I have where it's like I don't. Tongue and I talked about this last year. When did Final Fantasy 16 come out? Was that this year? Last year, where like the story just kind of it's so like, hey guys, prejudice is bad, and that's like kind of all it has to say, and that's kind of the point I'm at in Metaphor. I'm hoping it gets to be a little bit more something.
It expands into ideological virtues. At the
Okay.
core of it, it's still like racism is not great, folks.
Totally, which I think is a good, which I especially nowadays I think is a very good message to get across. I wish there was a bit more to it. And then the other thing, maybe hearing tongue, maybe I need to start using more abilities. But like I don't really find myself like I've done a couple boss fights now at this point, and none of them have been like, ah, cool, this is the solution. You know, there was like one guy where I was fighting, I was like, oh, cool, well, like this thing casts a shadow, so I must attack this thing. You know, and that was about it so far. I maybe just need to start looking at my other abilities. But
Wow.
like I was shocked when you said you liked the gameplay in this more than Persona 5, because Persona 5 the combat is so snappy and satisfying, but maybe I'm just thinking of like the dopamine stuff it feeds you of like, here's a cool effect, you figured it out, blam blam blam, and this is asking me to think a little bit more. But I do so far like it quite a bit. I definitely intend to finish it. Yeah. It's a cool game.
It is a cool game. I'll have more to say afterwards as well. But
For sure.
let's move on to Ethan. First nomination.
Yeah, so I think I'm gonna round out like we got some pretty heavy hitters here, and I think I'm just gonna round it out. We're gonna really go Game Awards here, and I'm gonna nominate Elden Ring: Shadow of the Erd Tree.
Oh, here we go. Doesn't count. No, just kidding.
Yeah, cancel it. Okay.
Yeah, go for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, the DLC, I don't even really want to call it a DLC. This really does feel like an entire it feels like it's so expansive, this DLC, I'll say in quotation marks. Because I played this and got like damn near like 60 hours out of this game, maybe more. Didn't really count or figure out how many hours I played, but it really just felt like an extension of one of the best like RPGs, open world RPGs of all time. So if that doesn't just get like accolades enough for nominating it for Game of the Year of this year, then I don't know what else could really. It has all the stuff that Elden Ring gave us the first time around, plus more. New weapons, new spells, whole new area to explore that was like the size of one of the biggest areas in the first game. Tons of different like biomes, I guess you could say, and whole new stories and lore to explore and stuff like that. It just gave us everything that Elden Ring gave us the first time around and just more of it. So I was really stoked to play it. I had a lot of fun with it, and I think it deserves to get nominated for Game of the Year.
Yeah, I have questions about this one. Not that it shouldn't be nominated. I think it for sure needs to be nominated. Like just the amount of work that went into Shadow of the Erd Tree, like listening to people who actually played it, seems like it's freaking huge for what you're getting.
is.
It's like, it seems massive. Is there any gameplay differences that they introduced in Shadow of the Erd Tree?
Yeah. I mean, there's new like weapons that unlock different playstyles and stuff like that. And that's
cool.
not just like, not just your wizard casting spells, your sword swingers and stuff like that. But they added it's been a while, but I remember specifically I was really excited about them adding like the martial arts.
Oh,
like,
cool.
Yeah, martial arts stuff for that. So I got that as soon as I could, and then adding different affinities to it. I got like a bleed build with like fists, so I just run at people, like kick them in the face until they bled and exploded from blood and from that, and just it was super sick. I don't know. I got to play around with a few new builds, but mostly I was sticking to like the martial arts and go back to some like other sorts of builds that I had. Yeah, I've been playing with.
An important part about what Shadow of the Erd Tree did based off of the base game is that it took some concepts that weren't fully realized in the base game and actually made them full-fledged playstyles. There was the perfumer set in the base game,
Right.
which would allow you to make like potions and stuff, and it was such an interesting idea, but it never really scaled up beyond the early game. Like there was just no way to really take it beyond those initial challenges. Shadow of the Erdtree added a whole weapon set and playstyle based around this perfumer set. And so now it was a fully realized concept. And they did a similar thing with, I think it was throwing knives. And so to that end, it certainly elevated elements of the base game. I have a feeling we'll end up getting to talk about this more. As much as I appreciated Shadow of the Erdtree, I did not feel it changed things enough to warrant being different than Elden Ring. But once again, we can, if the opportunity so arises, we can talk about it more.
But isn't like, I mean, yeah, we will talk about it, but as DLC, it shouldn't need to feel too different, I guess, right? It should just feel like
to be nominated in this podcast, it needs to be different.
I see. Okay.
Well, but like how different was, and this is coming from someone who did not play Erdtree.
Yeah, same here.
But like, I think my big thought process when we nominated, I can't remember if it was me or Matthew who nominated Iceborne a couple of years back. I think a big part of that was Monster Hunter hadn't been represented in previous years, and it just felt like an opportunity of like, okay, well, now there's this big expansion coming to it, but did it change the game enough? You know what I mean? I don't know.
Point.
Maybe it did. It's been so long. I now when I think of Monster Hunter World, I just think of Iceborne because that's the one I played last. I don't really think of the base game, but it'd be interesting to talk about it more. So you guys both played it, right?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Nice.
I think the reason why, I mean, probably like Angus, like I never finished Elden Ring base game. I loved my time with it, but I sucked enough at it where I kind of got like, like it is one of those games where you're Souls-like game where you're just chopping away at a boss for so long, and then when you beat it, you have this huge rush, and you're like, "That's amazing!" And like the world design and all the enemies are so cool. But I just felt like I sucked so much that like by the time I beat one boss, and then like 10 seconds later, I had to fight another boss that was just gonna kick my ass for another few hours. I'm like, I'm gonna take a break, but that break just turned into like an infinite break, which is unfortunate. But with Shadow of the Erdtree, I was really curious to go into it. And I'm glad that everyone who played it really enjoyed it. But I did find like I was kind of scared to go back in because like there's no way I'm going to remember anything of my previous builds or anything that was happening in the game that I had previously. And I know with Erdtree, you have to get to a certain point.
Two bosses, right? You have to beat, right?
Yeah, you have to beat two of the hardest bosses.
Is one of them a secret boss? Because one's Radon and the other is Morgut. I can't remember who the other boss is. I started playing base Elden Ring again right before my kid was born because I was like, oh, you know what? I mainly was like, I didn't think I'd actually make it to the point where I could play Erdtree, but I was like, I just want to play it again. I had such a blast playing it, and I got almost back to where my first run through was in like a third of the time. I was so much better at the game, but I never quite got. I think I definitely beat Radon. I beat him on my first try this time.
Moog, the Lord of Blood.
Where's he?
He's in his own special domain. It's a whole thing.
Okay, yeah, I don't know if I beat Moog, but it's something I intend to do someday.
Yeah, I guess that's
maybe
like,
when my kid takes longer naps.
My point was like there's more of a barrier to entry into getting into Shadow of the Erdtree, but like the game is made for the people who love Elden Ring. So in a way, it's like, who gives a fuck about me? Like it's made for the people who are like, oh, they're deep in Elden Ring. You want more? Here you are. So I think that's kind of cool.
And I think they were always pretty upfront about that. Of like, you have to be pretty far in Elden Ring to play the Erdtree stuff, and I respect that.
Me too.
I certainly do. They didn't pull one over on the people who would like, oh, I just started it, but I might as well buy the DLC. But anyway, cool. Solid.
Let's go into the second round of nominations here. Second round, my God. All right. We've already talked about my number 1 and 2, and I'm going to save my number 3 because I know probably Angus is going to nominate it. So I'm going to go into my number 4 game of the year that I made this list like 10 minutes before we started our podcast. So we'll see how it actually sticks after this podcast. But this might be a surprise to people. I don't think I have really talked about this game with you guys or anybody, really. It is Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown. Is my number 4 game of the year. And yeah. I think this game flew under the radar for so many people. And I think this game needs to have its flowers because it just kind of came out of nowhere. It didn't sell very well, which is why like Ubisoft like disbanded the team afterwards, which is a big shame because Prince of Persia has not been interesting in fucking forever. They have not been able to do anything with this franchise for so long. Even the Sands of Time remake that they're trying to do has been in development hell. and they're just remaking an old game. This is a brand new Prince of Persia game that is a 2D Metroidvania game. So if you like those types of games, I fucking love those types of games. This game is for you. And it is probably one of the best playing Metroidvania games I've ever played. And I don't say that lightly because I've played a lot of those types of games. But if you're talking about like combos and movement around the world, this is so fluid. It's bananas. It's not talked about more. And they do so many interesting things that make it feel like it's evolving the Metroidvania format. Like I said, there's like I don't know, like it's 500 Metroidvania games that come out every year. And how do you set it apart? Well, this one has like things that I'm like, oh my God, why doesn't every Metroidvania game have this? Like, so in a typical Metroidvania game, you unlock abilities that you're able to go to places that you weren't able to access before. Maybe you need a double jump. Maybe you need some sort of item to get through a door, whatever it is. But then you end up forgetting where all of these things are. And you're relying on this map that when you're looking at it, you're like, well, I don't know. It seems too far to get to. And I'm not even sure if I get to it, I'll even be able to do anything with that. Well, the way you can move and traverse through the Prince of Persia map is so fluid and fast that it's always a blast to just like go through it. But also you have like special markers that you can put into the map with like a picture that you can like capture with your mind's eye. So like think of like if you see a door, you can capture that. And then when you look at your map later, you can be like, oh, right there on that map, you can see the door that you're like, you know, you could have went through or not. And that saves you so much time than like going back and being like, ah, shit, I can't actually access that anymore. So you're like, it's a cool way to like track where things are on the map. And I found like just the entire experience was just such a joy to play. I don't think the story is very good, but I think in like a lot of Metroidvania games, they're not. They're just not. They're just like so secondary. But I found the style of the game and yeah, again, the way it plays was just super memorable. It came out in like January of this year. So like, again, flew under people's radars. I don't think it came out at a good price point. I think it was a little bit too expensive for what it was. But
were there 2 Prince of Persia games this year?
Mm-hmm.
Was there?
I'm pretty sure there were.
I think there was DLC for this one, which I did not play. I don't usually play DLC for like a Metroidvania game, but like, yeah, I found it.
Ethan's my guy in the chair. I can tell he's Googling it for me. I'm like,
exactly.
Which wire do I
Was there
cut?
another one? I can't.
Yeah.
I feel like I wouldn't.
Because there's
I'm
one with
fairly
more
certain there was, but-
cartoony design, I thought.
This is the cartoony design one, like the cell shaded one.
Lost
Yeah.
Crown?
The Lost
okay.
Crown. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I'm...
Now Angus is his own guy in the chair.
Yeah.
While they're Googling, I didn't get a chance to play this game. It was on my radar. I always love a good Metroidvania, but there were... Actually, I know exactly what game sort of trumped it in my mind, and I'll probably get to it when it's my turn.
Okay, I'm excited to hear that.
But despite all that, I can always appreciate the Prince of Persia sort of IP because it was one of my favorite games growing up. And so I would be interested in hearing more about it should the opportunity arise because, like I said, I enjoy Prince of Persia.
I think you'll
enjoy
like
Metroidvania.
it. I think you'll like
I probably would. It probably just got trumped over by other games I was interested in at that point in time.
Totally. And like at the beginning of the year, you're like, oh, I want to play some of the games that were talked about last year or like whatever other games. Angus?
A second Prince of Persia game called The Rogue Prince of Persia entered early access this year.
Oh, that thing. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. It wasn't that one. It wasn't
it's not that one.
No, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Very cool game. Angus.
Okay. This next game, my second nomination, isn't without its controversy. However, I think the game at the core of the center of that is such a fun experience that I think it's truly baffling that it wasn't one of the Video Game Award nominations. Like I was truly shocked that this didn't make the nominations. I'm of course talking about Helldivers 2.
That's why I didn't say it.
I have had, now Matthew and I are in the same play group for this one. I have had so much fun playing this game.
It's an amazing game.
It's something, and Matthew and I have talked a ton about this because it was a big thing we loved about actually Monster Hunter World, and I hope fingers crossed for Wilds next year or this year, I guess. But a game that's kind of got an open enough framework that you can have these emergent moments that are not scripted, that are so impossibly like memorable and like one of a kind, and it's just like it feels truly special. And this game is like chock full of them. Now, I understand Sony did some sketchy things as a publisher of this game. I personally don't hold no ill will against the developers, Arrowhead. I think they have done the best they can with like I don't think the choices that were made in terms of releasing this game were done by them, because it would kind of go against every other vibe they've put out. I don't know, but who knows? But the game itself, just strictly speaking about the game, I think this is maybe one of the best multiplayer games to come out this year, and such a big part of it is too that there's this like. I mean, there's something to be said that like people might not get that it's satire. That's a bummer if people don't get the overt satire. But there's like a little bit of like almost like role playing going on in this game with some people. Like I see people making content online about the game's future updates as though they were news reports within the reality of this game. And it just like I appreciate that creativity. And I think as far as a game that could have been much more predatory with its microtransactions, I think it's been very, for the most part, fairly generous. I know they recently partnered with like Killzone 2, and I haven't played in the last month or so. So I'm sure they did something. I think they had to do kind of like a make good and make some stuff free. But again, this game is so much fun to play. I love cresting a ridge, seeing, Mathew surrounded by robots, and I lay down a bunch of suppressing fire so that he can, get behind cover and reload. And then we like take a bunch of guys out, and then we throw like bombs and like jets fly in and explosions, fucking lasers. And it's just a really fun, solid game. And I love playing with my friends dearly.
What kind of game would you say it is for the people who don't know what Helldivers is?
Helldivers is a cooperative PvE shooter, third person shooter.
Yeah.
I guess it's kind of an extraction game.
Yourself at the end, yeah.
Yeah, but yes, you drop in. It doesn't have like the collecting loot like a normal extraction shooter would, like a Warzone type thing. But yeah, you drop in, you complete a series of objectives, and then you exfiltrate with your teammates in a given timeline. The added bonus though is there's all these things called stratagems, these like airdrops, and you drop in new equipment, or you have like bombing runs, all these variety of weapons and stuff like that. And I will say, I personally think they've done a great job balancing weapons, because there was this emergent meta at the beginning where it was basically like you have to run these two guns and this shield, and I hate that shit. I hate when that shit happens. I want to be able to, I think this gun, like I want to play with an assault rifle, or I want to play with a sniper rifle. I think all of them should be viable. And they've really done a lot of balancing lately to make the game more fun, less tryhardy and just more fun. And I it's so refreshing. But anyway, Matthew, you've played the game. What do you think?
Touching off of what you just sort of said there, the dev team for this is probably one of the most mature dev teams I've ever seen, insofar as they were willing to compromise their original vision for the sake of their fan base. Arrowhead, when they released Helldivers, it was intended to be a very sweaty, try-hard, like squad-based shooter. And they achieved that. Like Helldivers was very popular, but within its niche. Helldivers 2 became mainstream popular overnight, but with mainstream, you get a whole bunch of people who aren't sweaty and aren't tryhards. And so Arrowhead had to pivot their design philosophy, and they pulled it off. As Angus said, they made the game fun rather than making it too difficult.
And those top level difficulties, I think you could still get that sweaty moment to moment gameplay
100%.
Yeah. But anyway, sorry, continue.
Just for that point alone, just like a dev team that is so open to their fan base that they're willing to listen and almost pivot the entire sort of focus of the game is just refreshing in this day and age. But going back to the gameplay, Angus is right. It's just got so many interesting peaks and valleys in terms of power level. There will be points where you're like running around scraping together ammo because you've got nothing left and you're just like trying to survive. And then there's other points where all your cooldowns are refreshed. You're at max ammunition. And you're just like a fucking war god. You've got a mech coming down that you climb into and you're firing rockets, and you got a minigun just mowing down enemies. And then you've got your friend who's summoning in an orbital laser that's just mowing down the masses. They have been so good about releasing new content for this on a pretty routine schedule that you never feel as though it's getting stale. There's always something new to engage with. But as I say that, I do have other things to bring up. If we get a chance to bring it up. If it comes up.
If it comes up.
If it comes up.
Before we move on, Ethan, do you have anything to say about Helldivers?
Not too much. Yeah. I reciprocate everything that's been said about it. I have some opinions about it too that we can probably get to later. If it gets brought up.
If it gets brought up.
If it gets brought up.
If it comes up.
I will just say my 2 cents real quick is that I don't play multiplayer games. like in general. I just find it just because it's harder. It's harder to play, like get a crew together in this day and age to do stuff. I did not renew PlayStation Plus for over a year because I found when they increased the price by 30% on the whatever yearly membership, I thought that was gross. And I just wasn't getting value out of PS Plus and playing online or anything like that. But Helldivers came out and I was curious about it, and it got this huge buzz and wave of excitement that I have not seen in a game in a very long time. And this is like if I'm deep into a multiplayer game, I know I like it because, you know, I'm playing with friends, I'm playing with people, I'm scheduling time to do this with friends. And I did that for like 3 months straight. I was playing almost every single night for hours and hours with friends, my cousins. I had an absolute blast. And something that wasn't said with all our discussion with Helldivers so far is that like there is built-in hilarity that happens in this game where you can there's friendly fire, so you can accidentally shoot your teammate in the back of the head in the midst of something intense happening, but that is just as fun and part of the experience as actually just like killing the enemy. And the amount of times I laughed in this game is a lot. This game's so fun.
It's certainly the funniest friendly fire. And also one last, the writing is also very funny. Like they know that it's very much like I feel bad for the Starship Troopers game that came out this year because it was totally overshadowed. But it's like it captures the satire of Starship Troopers perfectly. Like I love the little like, you know, the loading screen things. There's one that always stuck out to me. It was like, if an alien combatant ever tries to engage in diplomacy, kill it immediately. And just like it's a very funny game. And speaking of Tom, in terms of friendly fire, the funniest friendly fire I've ever had in the game.
Yeah.
Like I'm never mad for long after.
Yeah.
I was like, oh look, I'll go figure. Matthew and I have a friend who always seems to bring the
widest AoE.
Yeah, the orbital bombardment that's always it's the widest range, and it's always impractical, and he throws it like right at your feet, and you see the laser, and you're like, come on, man. and then honestly, to go into like social media and see people make memes that they're having that same experience, I just feel like togetherness with my fellow gamer, you know?
And I think it's a testament to the quality of the like core loop of the game that like when the game came out, like nobody could have predicted how popular it was. So like the devs were scrambling for the first few months to just keep servers up, for disconnects, all these things that were happening. And despite all of that, people wanted to keep playing more and more of it, including myself. Like there was nights where we're like, okay, this guy's disconnecting, this person's disconnecting, but like it didn't matter. Like once we were in a game, it was just super fun. And like the crossplay between PC and PS5, I always find like can be difficult because you're playing like a shooter game. And you're like, well, the PC player is going to be better because they have a mouse and keyboard. But that wasn't the case for Helldivers. You can still be quite capable as a controller player to like contribute to the cause. And I think that's, again, just awesome. Yeah, Angus did the pose. But we should move on. Matthew, what do you have? Second nomination.
So all my top 3 games have already been nominated, so I'm going down into my second string here. This is actually the Metroidvania I was bringing up as a counterpoint to Prince of Persia, Animal Well. Animal Well, if you consider Prince of Persia to be like your top of the line, it's got all these new quality of life features to make gaming better for you. Animal Well kind of like takes a step back and says like, all right, figure it out, fuck nuts. Like some of the puzzles are just so off the walls, insane. It truly did take me back to like the days of the Super Nintendo where you're just sort of given a wide open space to just sort of poke at. It does have some quality of life features. Sorry, purists. You can't put badges on the map to say like, oh, I need to come back here later. But that's just it. They're badges. You can't, make a detailed note to yourself about what was there unless you have a notebook beside you. And guess what I did? Just like back in the Super Nintendo days, I had a little notebook where I'm like, oh yeah, this quadrant with this symbol means this, and I need this thing. It's such a pure game experience. I can't really put it into thought better than that. It was a game without any other frills. And
there's no pointless crafting system or anything.
No pointless crafting system. There was no like forced online component to like rank yourself against others. You load in. I don't even remember a loading screen. Like you literally just hit start and you start in the Animal Well and then you just start exploring and poking around. And at no point is there like an annoying tutorial guy is like, hey, when you do this, you get global points. And then like he keeps pushing you to get global points. That's not a thing in the game. Global points is something I made up on the spot. I do improv. But yeah, it was probably the most pure, refined gaming experience. That doesn't necessarily mean I think it was the best gaming experience. It just was a game with no added bloat. I opened the floor.
Yeah, did anyone else play Animal? I played maybe a few hours of it.
Me too, as well. It kind of got overshadowed by other stuff, but it was one of those ones that I do want to go back to. I dug the style, the vibe. I feel like it doesn't look like any other game that came out this year. And kind of speaking to this, as I'm hearing these nominations, it does feel like a big theme this year is like quality of life. There's a lot of stuff in a lot of the games we've mentioned where it's like, oh yeah, do you know that annoying thing that we all hate about video games? Well, here, like this game doesn't have that anymore, and so that's more of an overarching topic. But I thought Animal World was very cool, and I think a sign for like a positive sign for the future of indie games.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ethan, did you play Animal Well at all?
I didn't. I heard and was seeing a lot of people talk about it and saw some people playing it a little bit. Just never gripped me. You know, maybe like everything else, it's like there was other games I was interested in playing and, you know, didn't really have enough time to really dig into it myself. But happy to hear that Matthew really loved it. And yeah, excited to talk more about it if we can.
My time with it, I don't think I liked it. That's kind of where I ended with it, but I do appreciate it a lot, I guess, on the outside. I think the style and especially I think the sound design in Animal Well is quite good. Like the jump and like you landing, like whatever that retro kind of sound that they have going on, I think is just like very nice. But I did not enjoy like traversing through Animal Well. And it's not like a combat Metroidvania game. We should say that, right? Like it's a
pure platformer Metroidvania.
Exactly. So the abilities you get are just to traverse. But I did find one of those things where like, this is by design, but I did find it confusing it was hard for me to remember where to go in the world, even though I just played it a few days ago. So if I put it down for a few days and I come back to it, I found it very difficult to continue on my journey and what puzzles I could and couldn't do. So I found myself kind of looping around a lot. And then there was some platforming in the game, which it is a platformer Metroidvania. I found some of the platforming like not good, or it didn't feel good for me. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm not confident we'll get a chance to talk about this game more. So I am just going to add this little piece. And now what you're touching on, Tung, is arguably the thing I liked least about it as well. A lot of Metroidvanias, when you get into the late game, will introduce some kind of a quick travel system. Animal Wells has to have the most poorly implemented one I've ever seen. There's just so many like shortcuts it offers to you that are useless. And you're like,
yeah,
this is a nothing.
And then you have to go through the thing again, which maybe took you a few tries to get through. And like I remember there was like a part where you're like jumping on top of bubbles to get to the other side. But if you fall down a few floors and you're like, well, I know I have to get back up there. And if I fuck it up again, I will have to go back up there again.
There is a post game to Animal Well where after you beat the game, you can go and do additional challenges to get upgraded versions of all the items. And a lot of those upgraded versions of the items negate the difficulty you were experiencing. But like any true game, you're only allowed to get the fun toys once you've proven you don't need them.
Yeah.
So
no, I'm glad you brought it up because Animal Well, when it came out, like a lot of people loved it, which I think is cool, especially because it's such a small game. And I love the wins for small games this year. Ethan, what do you got? Second nomination.
So this is a little awkward because this game definitely is early access. It's in like an alpha state at this point.
I'm seething.
Yeah, it's you already hated my Shadow of the Erdtree one. I can't believe what you're gonna say about this. So I'm gonna nominate Deadlock. This is Valve's newest game. It is a MOBA. It is not a hero shooter. So thank God it's not gonna go with it Concord. But it's a MOBA true and true. But the twist to it is that it is a third person shooter as well.
It's a hero.
So it's a okay, you do use heroes to shoot people, but it does have a huge MOBA element to it, and it's just a complete change of the genre. It's a complete it's a really, really innovative game for this space I've found. Like I said, it's in alpha. Like it is they're adding people who they're like T-posing around the map as you're playing and stuff like that. They have like hero labs where they add new heroes and they're just like go to town and we're gonna balance it as this goes on for the next like 7 years probably that this game's going to be in development for. They did the same thing with Dota. I think when Dota 2 came out, they released it in alpha, and then just as time went on, it finally hit 1.0. I don't know how long, 5 years later, something like that. I have no idea, but they're doing the same thing with this game. So if this is the last time we're going to be able to talk about video games and rank video games, I definitely think this is worth talking about
A fair point.
now. Because we're not going to be able to rank it when 1.0 hits for sure.
Ever.
So,
Ever.
I won't let us talk about video games.
No. After today, no more video game talk ever.
yeah.
I don't think we talk to each other at all after this.
They block everybody on.
So there was another. Actually, you know what? There was a lot of hero shooters that came out this year, and I know Deadlock is not a hero shooter, but it is obviously inspired by that genre.
Sure.
It is, as you pointed out, it's a MOBA that has evolved, and I think it is truly a unique evolution of the MOBA genre to incorporate what is already obviously a very popular genre, being the hero shooter. I loved a lot of what it was doing. It is in an alpha state, so I didn't love everything because it's not done yet, but I found the setting to be interesting. It's like magic 1920s gangster in New York, which if anyone has ever read the Dresden Files novels, I got like huge whiffs of inspiration from that setting. The MOBA elements of buying items to augment your character's stats and to slowly level up your abilities over time, all of that felt cool and unique. This is one of the things I've always sought from a MOBA is abilities that grow over time. And this truly felt like it captured it. Like your abilities don't just go up in terms of numbers. They legitimately change as you level them up, which is something I always appreciate. Anyone who's ever played League of Legends, like your abilities don't really change that much. The design velocities change a bit, but overall, your ability at level 1 is the same ability at level 18. And that is not true for Deadlock. Like by the end of the game, your character is wildly different from where they started, which are all things I appreciate. Time will tell how well a shooter genre translates to MOBA. Like it's just too early to say. One of the things I've always appreciated about a MOBA game is that they've always required a certain level of teamwork. And from what I've seen in some Deadlock games is you can just sort of brute force it if you're good at shooters.
Yeah, you can.
I've played a bit of it as well, and I got to say I really like it. I think it's really promising. Kind of echoing a bit of what you were both saying. I can't wait to see what this game is like. Like even like within our play group, I think I might have liked it more than the other players I was playing with. I really appreciated the new approach. Like I'm not the best with point and click movement in Dota and stuff like that. And I don't know, I feel like I'm over clicking, under clicking, all this stuff. And just being able to move my keys and move my character in like a third person camera view. I was like, okay, I feel pretty good about this, to the point where like the first game we played, I was like the MVP on my team. I had like 37 kills and like 2 deaths. And I was like, oh, okay, there might be something wrong with this game if I'm doing that well this first time. But no, I really liked it. And I am definitely keeping my eye on it for sure. I will gladly be jumping back in when it's even a couple months from now, just being like, oh, what's new in here,
Totally. I'm looking forward to the journey, and I'm definitely going to lock in the future. The one thing I'll say just to end it is that if people are scared by MOBAs, huge item lists and tons of nuances and stuff like that, there's a really cool feature in this game where they simplify it. They simplify it in one way, so it's easy to pick up. That there is spirit, there's health, and there's weapon damage. So your spirit is associated with your abilities, weapon damage ups your weapon damage, and your health is your health. It does augments your health and stuff like that. But each item can augment your character in a certain way. It can give you more weapon damage or more like a bigger AoE for your abilities or stuff like that, or give you like a special shield you activate. But depending on whether it affects your weapons, your health, or your spirit, the higher tier items there's certain tiers in the items. All they do at the basic fundamental level is like up your damage, up your ability damage, and up your health. And that's sometimes all you need for like a beginner to get into these games and be like, okay, I'll just buy higher level orange items and that will make my weapon do more damage instead of like, oh, I'm going to buy this specific weapon upgrade to like enhance the speed of my bullets because that, plays
Yeah.
in well with this other item I buy and blah 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 and the character type and stuff. So yeah, it's just cool. It's a cool little mechanic they added there.
I feel like,
That's a good
again,
point.
speaking to quality of life stuff, I feel like
Mm-hmm.
in the MOBA environment, I would not be shocked if when this one fully releases, it's an in point for a lot of people into the
Totally.
genre.
Yeah.
Do you play
'cause-
with?
yeah.
Sorry, you play with WASD, I guess, for this MOBA, right? Like that
Yeah.
kind of control. Yeah, it's different than like your Dotas and your League of Legends in that way, where you're just controlling through as
It's
many
close.
clicks as possible. Because like thinking of MOBAs these days with my old man hands, it's just like I don't want to engage with that because I don't have that super twitchy, clicky stuff. That
It's closer to something like Smite if you played that at all,
Yeah.
which is another third person MOBA,
got it.
but a bit more. There's a bit more stuff going on, I feel like. Anyway,
All right. Deadlock. Wow.
Deadlock.
That's really cool. All right. So let's go into our final round of nominations.
tough.
Tough.
Yeah.
Did I
I'm
nominate
scraping the bottom of the barrel here.
I still have a good chunk of my bottom half of my list that hasn't been said yet, but I am going to nominate my number 6 on my list. This is probably not on anyone else's list as well, but my number 6 is called Lorelei and the Laser Eyes.
Yeah.
No idea what this game is.
So I had not heard about this one until you mentioned it, Tung. I Googled it. It looks cool. I did not play it.
That's okay.
Sell me on it.
Oh, man. Okay. First of all, it's a puzzle game. First and foremost, it's a puzzle game. If you don't like puzzle games, then this game's not for you. But this game, basically, you're a woman who is summoned to like a hotel and you're trying to figure out this mystery surrounding this environment and why you're even here in the first place. So you're navigating through this entire hotel environment and like the courtyard and stuff like that. And you're solving puzzles to basically learn more about what's happening in the world. It has like a very nonlinear mystery storytelling narrative device. And the thing about this game is that it is one of those games that I've not played like a game like The Witness before. And Matthew, you talked about like using a notebook for playing a game. And I've not played any of those games yet, but I've heard a lot about this game this year being like a kind of like an indie darling. And essentially what you're doing is you're just kind of like, again, walking around and you're kind of looking at stuff there's like a lot of abstract puzzles that are going on, but you're given all the information to be able to solve it. And I'm going to show the cast here my notebook. I don't know. You can't really
It's
see.
blank pages.
I think I'm looking at the Unabomber.
But like I'm showing just a bunch of gibberish on a page. And I have never, ever played a game that has forced me to use a notebook and kind of think about puzzles in like a very unique way. And I found it's super engaging. I've never played a puzzle game like this. And I don't know what else to say about it besides that it's just like if you like a puzzle game and you like to think outside the box, and I honestly think like the world of Lorelei made me want to push and find out what's happening in the world. That's kind of why I enjoyed it so much. But like, again, like the fact that it made me, someone who likes to play, I don't know, third person, action games or whatever, Zelda like games, platformer games, dive into like a purely puzzle mechanics game so you like discover like paintings in the game, you discover like notebooks in the game, and you're like kind of combing through all of this information to be able to solve the next thing, to unlock the next room and the next door and the next mystery. And I think it does a really good job with like kind of tickling that part of the brain that made me feel really smart and then other times really dumb. So I think like there's times like obviously in some games when you get super frustrated, you're going to look it up later on how the puzzle was supposed to be solved. And then you discover that answer and you're like, oh, I should have come up with that by myself. If I thought about it for another 10 minutes, I could have came up with this information myself. But something that I really enjoyed about this game was that even someone like Laura, who does not play games, but she has like a natural puzzle-like mind, I could send her a puzzle later and she would be able to figure it out, and it would help me out to find
cool.
like get to the next part. So I found like there was a level of like collaboration that was happening with a non-gaming partner to like come into this and give fresh eyes on how this puzzle was supposed to be solved. And I think that's just like a really neat thing. Yeah.
your wife is like a classic puzzler because she's like assembling a baby or something right now.
She's
right?
assembling a baby, and she loves like actual like jigsaw puzzles. That's the puzzle she loves to like actually do, that kind of stuff. But these is like all logic puzzles, and it's logic puzzles plus thinking outside the box. I can send you guys some things later, and you'll be like looking at it, you're like, I don't fucking get it. But once you're given the answer, you're like, oh my gosh, it was in front of me this entire time. And I think, that's kind of the joy about this game, is because it made me feel really, really smart whenever I did figure it out.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's a good feel.
I appreciate too that it's not like a lot of modern games where it's like you're looking at a puzzle and you've looked at it for like 2 seconds, and then there's a character like, you got to move the gears. It's like, buddy, shut the fuck up. I'm trying to figure this out.
Let me cook.
Yeah.
I will also say, like, it has probably one of the best names in games this year, Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. Great.
Amazing name.
Great name for
Love
a game.
alliteration.
Yeah.
I would go see them, like an underground concert where there's a band called Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. That would be a fun night, I'm
Florence
sure.
the Machine inspired.
And the aesthetic of the game is very, very cool. You can look up pictures later, but I think it looks really, really, really like I haven't really seen a lot of games like that look like this, and probably in a long time. Angus, what do you got? Last nomination for you.
It's so tough, man. It really, really is. Man, my first 2 noms were so easy. Like I knew I'd be able to nom at least one of those. This third one is truly tough because like I've got a list. I kind of just wrote out a list of 10. I hadn't really organized my thoughts in that way, and just firing from the hip, like my number 4 is very similar to one of the other games nominated, and I'm like, well, this, like, do I really need to nominate that? Should I? And then like, it's tough because like I love a good variety, in our list, and so I've got like 3 I keep flip flopping between here, and I think I just have to go with my gut and say my third nomination, my last nomination for all of ranked game of the year, is V Rising. I wasn't expecting to say that. I really wasn't expecting to say that.
I was expecting Hentai Girls 2024.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that not what I just said? Man, Steam. I'll every now and then I'll click on Steam, like, what's selling these days? And it's like the first, like, always in the top 3, there's like a porn game, and I'm like,
Weird porn game.
What is this?
Yeah.
Gooners are taking over.
Just side note there, I always find it weird that the eShop Nintendo family friendly console near the top always is one of those weird hentai girl games, and it's like it's like a porn game, and anybody can buy it. Weird.
Yeah. Wow. Well, V Rising, not a porn game, but a survival crafting base building game where you get to play as a vampire. And one of those games that like it kind of was always on my radar. I've had it on my wish list for a long time. And then a couple of my friends got it, tried it, and then didn't kind of keep going with it. I know Matthew's shaking his head. Matthew really didn't like it, which was another reason I wasn't going to nom this. But I picked it up and started playing with my wife. My wife and I started our own server, and we were playing it ourselves. And it's an absolute blast. It's got a lot of quality of life stuff that I wish more of these survival these like survival base building games had. The base building tools are really fun. There's a lot of good like aesthetic stuff. You're like capturing people and putting them in cages and drinking their blood.
Fun.
It's like a flavor win.
I love doing that in real life.
But you've got this thing where it's like, okay, you're a vampire. You theoretically should be like super powerful, and there are certain things you could that kind of limit your power. Like, okay, daytime you need to work on something inside your castle or build some potions to resist sunlight. Also, we set up our own server. We made the daytime slightly shorter than it is by default, which I highly recommend. But there's bosses, and it's like you don't have to go, like, you essentially like pick a boss from a menu and it gives you like a blood trail leading to them. And in terms of these, like, I think this is the best one for, like, I was a big fan of like Ark Survival Evolved, but I always kept wanting something more than just defending my base from other players. I wanted something where I was like, I want like dungeons to go do and stuff like this. And this kind of had like, there are bosses and the boss fights are really fun and interesting. And a lot of the progression is pretty solid. So yeah, I just really liked it. And I'm realizing it's probably because I've been playing it with my wife, who I'm a big fan of. And I had a lot of fun with it. So yeah, that's my last nomination. I'm just as surprised as you guys are.
I'll say this much about V Rising. I did not give this game a fair chance. Truly. Like I'll acknowledge that. I did not give this game a fair chance. When my friends who were Angus suggested the game to me, and I downloaded and installed it. I played it for less than 2 hours so that I could refund it to Steam because I'm like, this game is just not clicking with me. Angus makes some valid points. If you can tweak the server side settings to make daytime shorter, to make the game more fun, to tailor to your playstyle, I would encourage you to do that. Out of the box, I was like, this game is like the worst parts of every survival crafting game I've ever played, with the added detriment that I can't play half the time because I'm burning to death in the sunlight.
A quarter of the time.
Well, it's been a bit since I played it.
No, totally understand.
Angus, you bringing up the fact that there are bosses and there's like actual sort of like PvE content to engage with, where the real sort of drive isn't PvP. I appreciate that. And had that been more readily available to me within those 2 hours, I might have stayed with it longer.
Yeah.
But once again, like, it was the quintessential beginning of any survival game experience. You start with nothing. You have to punch shit to get your basic tools. You get ganged up on by an enemy 5 bajillion times stronger than you are. You lose all your shit. You have to start over again. Like, it was just, I was like, guys, I've done this experience thousands of times. I'm not looking forward to doing it again.
Yeah, because I don't think we'll get to talk more about this later to the listener and stuff like that. It does have a lot of quality and life improvements. Like, when you die, you don't drop your gear. Like, the gear you're wearing resurrects with you, but like the wood that you got from a tree, that drops. So you got to go back and get that. And yeah, there are little things that you tweak, but like I feel like that's kind of part and parcel when it comes to like survival games. Like, even when Mathew and I our friend group had an Ark server, and we upped the amount of damage you would do to trees so that you could, harvest more and stuff like that. We made certain things longer and shorter and stuff like that. Yeah, I think that's just kind of part of the genre, unfortunately, because they can't tailor it to everyone's experience. But I'm like, okay, well, I've only got a couple hours a night to play with my wife, so maybe a couple hours, maybe an hour and a half when we sit down to play it. So we were able to tweak those kinds of things. But I'm trying to think. Even there's like you claim an area to build your base in, and it's like, okay, once you've claimed this area, and it's pretty delineated on the map, no one else can build there. You've claimed it, and you get to build in this area. The building tool is really solid. What else? And then there's a built-in thing for moving your castle. When you move to a new area, you can plop this thing down, and it essentially gives you all the pieces of your castle, and you can rebuild it really quickly. Anyway, stuff like that. V-Rising, check it out.
I think I'd like it. I thought Matthew's argument was like, I don't like V-Rising because it's not called D-Rising. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Where's the penises?
And where's that spatchcock?
Matthew, your final nomination.
So Angus actually brought up an interesting point at the start of his monologue there. This is the last nomination I'm ever going to make for this podcast. And I never got to nominate this game back when it was first released, but it just released a DLC this year, which means I can now nominate it. Oh. And it does fit the criteria that it changed things up enough. This is, of course, Factorio Space Age.
Okay.
Now, Factorio is a game I've sunk many hundreds of hours into. I love Factorio. Factorio is my shit. Factorio Space Age just sort of takes Factorio, the base game, fixes a lot of like the quality of life stuff, and then expands upon it. And then you go, you're never going to believe this, you go to space.
What?
So anyone who's played the base game of Factorio will know that the entire point is that you take place on one planet, and you're working from literally picking rocks up off the ground. A thing I just said I hated about V-Rising, but bear with me.
But there's conveyor belts.
Exactly. Rather quickly, you start automating all the stuff that is annoying about a survival game. And then by the mid game, you're not even really playing your character anymore. You're playing as the factory. The factory
middle
just starts,
manager.
Yeah, you effectively play as like an army of robots that start building the factory for you, and then like the game stops being about what you can see as your character, and it starts being about what you can see at the factory level, and then building it from there. So that's the base game, and I've already talked way too much about the base game. Space Age, at that midpoint of the base game, says, all right, stop. You're done with the base planet. We're now going to go to space, and you're going to go to a different planet. And you go to a different planet, and it adds a new logistical hurdle to building your factory on that planet. And there's a couple of different options there. I think there's a total of 5 planets now, whether it be that your machines will freeze on the icy planet, or there's a planet where there's lava everywhere and there's worms that will eat your base, or maybe it's the planet where there's just lightning all the time. Each planet introduces its own challenge, but it also introduces its own unique technologies. And the idea being that once you master that planet, you can take the technologies from that planet and bring them to your other planets to continue the game. With the end result being that instead of having a factory that spans a planet, you have a factory that now spans a galaxy. And then like you start building spaceships that take resources between planets, and the spaceships become a part of your logistical network. It just took the entire concept of what made Factorio great, expanded upon it, and added new mechanical depth that you can't fully appreciate unless you played the base game and then have also played Space Age. But the whole point of the game is like how big can you make your factory, and now you can make your factory as big as a galaxy. So
Wow.
it's pretty great.
I always find it. I don't know if factory building games are my kind of thing because I always get kind of like intimidated by that stuff. Like, you know,
Blasphemer.
I know. I heard Factorio is amazing. And like Satisfactory came out, 1.0 came out this year. And I'm just like, oh, do I go into this? Because people say it's a 10 out of 10 game. But I just feel like it's just one of those games that are probably not for me. But I like that other people like these kinds of games.
Factorio is for me as V Rising is for Matthew. I played just over 2 hours of Factorio, so I can't return it. But I did not enjoy my time in it. It's something I probably should give another fair shake to, especially now that there's co-op. It's another game my wife really likes, so potentially I'll be like, babe, can you explain how this game works to me? I'm talking to Matthew in that scenario.
Don't worry, babe.
But no, I'm glad. I do appreciate when a DLC comes out and it's kind of transformative and stuff like that. It sounded like
People are just angry. We're just nominating DLCs and alphas on this podcast. They're like, "What are you doing?"
It's the last one we're doing. Fuck y'all.
We'll do whatever the fuck we want because we make.
What are you
money.
gonna do? Not listen to us after this?
Ethan, did you have any thoughts on Factorio at all?
I know Factorio is huge. I know Satisfactory is huge. These are not my kind of games.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Cool. All right. Well, Ethan, you got to bring us home for the final nomination here.
Why you got to do this, man? So I'm kind of like Angus's like little speech there really hit home, and it's just like this is the last one we're gonna do. So like, what is the thing I want to go?
Which
out
of the
on?
several speeches hit?
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
Am I regretting going out on V Rising? Maybe. We'll never know.
That's kind of what I have. So there's been 2 Metroidvanias that have been nominated. And there's a possibility I could nominate a third one.
Oh shit!
I'm just talking through my process right now. Of like this is what I need to do.
Yeah.
So there's 2 Metroidvanias that have been nominated right now. I can nominate a third one to talk about. I don't know if I want to though. We got a platformer. I have an indie platformer I can nominate. That's been really fucking sick. But I'm also the fighting game guy. There's a huge fighting game that came out this year too.
I almost nominated a fighting game. I was this close.
Yeah, but I think I have to go with my gut thinking back about my head. Yeah. I got to go with my gut here. And I'm going to nominate the indie platformer that I really love this year, which is called Yellow Taxi Goes Vroom.
Whoa! I've seen you play this game. I'm so excited to hear you talk about it.
This game, it's kind of what Hi-Fi Rush did to me. Was that last year?
Yeah.
I think it might have been just last year. I had never heard about this game. This game kind of came out of left field for me. It wasn't a shadow drop like Hi-Fi Rush was, I believe, but for me, it was brand new when I saw the trailer for it. If you look at this trailer, and you look at the first trailer for this game, if you have any nostalgia for the N64 era of platformers and stuff, I can't imagine you will not be excited to at least try this game. The concept is that it is a complete nostalgia grab, but you play or you are a yellow taxi. You're like a wind-up yellow taxi made by a guy named Borio, or Barrio, if I remember correctly. He literally looks like Mario. And you're just set off onto these different themed worlds, and you collect gears like you do like in Odyssey, like Super Mario Odyssey. It's no fuss. It's very few bells and whistles. You have like a jump, you have a boost. You can kind of do cool sort of platforming tricks with like stalls in the air and stuff like that. It has that gross N64 era polygonal graphics and stuff like that, but it's very, coming back in a cool way nowadays. But this one doesn't even want to entertain the idea of like up-resing it or anything like that. It's totally nostalgic in that way. The music is a trip. It's just like N64 platformers on shrooms.
Are you constantly moving in it? Can you not stop? I'm watching the trailer. It looks crazy fast.
You can
awesome.
stop. Yeah, you can stop. It is super fast. It can get super hectic. It has the right amount of floaty platforming that makes it fun, but extremely frustrating at points, which I think is very on brand for what the nostalgia it's going for. This game was a complete trip. I didn't end up finishing it, I'll be honest, because I think there was another games that came out that I wanted to try. But this is definitely a game you can go back to, play, 20 minutes at a time, get a gear or two in a level and stuff like that. I think you could have a great time with it.
Yeah, heavy inspiration from Banjo-Kazooie and the other rare platformers.
100%. There are some crazy taxi spins in certain levels and stuff like that as well.
It's interesting too, as you mentioned, like where it's clearly got this targeted goal of being like an N64 nostalgia grab. Like I was recently doing this workshop on like making like a performance show for an audience, and part of critiquing a good show in this regard was like, what did it try to do? Did it accomplish what it was trying to do? And then like, was it worth doing? Kind of the 3 steps you need to go through in your head to decide if you like something. And I appreciate that it's so clearly, it's like, we're trying to do something. We're not trying to make a game that's like every other platformer. We're trying to recapture a specific time in the platforming genre. Yeah. And even just looking at the trailer, it's like, oh, I think they nailed it. Probably
100%, dude. It still has that, well, maybe a more crude fourth wall breaking sense of humor, because it knows it's trying to be like a parody of that time as well. So it's just like, it just nails it so hard. It's so sick.
Yeah, I want to play this. I remember you talking about this like really early on, or I don't know if it was that early on, but this year certainly. And it just has a really nice style to it that I think I enjoy about it. Yeah,
that's what gripped me right away.
Cool.
So,
you guys didn't save it for the cast?
Wow, wait, hang on.
He didn't talk about his feelings about it. He just said that he played it.
I don't know. We might have to do this whole thing over.
Notification come up.
That's right. All right. Well, that's our list of 12. Holy shit, we did it.
Wow.
We're going to take a break and then we'll come back and talk about this. But for now, let's go. I don't know. Let's V rising to the toilet. I do improv. And when we're back, we'll rank top 5 video games of 2024. We'll be back, everyone.
Have you ever wondered what it's like to live in a city full of superheroes? To literally see people fly across the sky? Crap.
What are you up to, Angus?
Oh, hey, Sal. I'm trying to record an ad for the podcast.
Heroes don't do paperwork?
Yeah, that one.
Need any help?
Yeah, actually. I'm just trying to tell people about the show, about how you and I work at a newspaper in Super City, and how we interview various citizens, from the people we call neighbors to the city's greatest heroes. But I'm having trouble wording it.
You could just use that section you recorded and put that in.
Huh. Yeah, I suppose I could. Thanks, Sal.
Don't worry about it. I'm off to the office supplies store. It got hit with a shrink ray, so everything is 50% off. Want to come?
You know what? I kind of do. Oh, for those of you hearing this, if you want to hear more about the thrilling adventures and heroics of Super City, come check out Heroes Don't Do Paperwork on the Podcover Network. All right, let's go.
Top five.
Hello, everyone. We are back. Hello, gamers. Are you ready to talk more about games?
I love your gamer voice.
You like my gamer voice?
What's up, gamers?
G4.
RIP G4 once again.
Yep. Once again.
Oh, man.
Oh, man. Listen, we came up with a very interesting final top 12 list for our last Game of the Year episode in the Podcover and for Ranked. And I'm pretty kind of stoked about it, honestly, because something I'm always a little like wary of is that, I don't want us to have the same list as everyone else. I don't. Because we're more important than that. We like to think outside the box and give you nominations of games that maybe haven't got the flowers that it deserves. Obviously, there's some things that like won the Game Award, which is Astrobot. But, I like who else is going to have Yellow Taxi Goes Vroom on their list?
Maybe us.
Games took their glasses off and let their hair down. They'd be the prettiest girl at the dance.
I feel like I don't remember last year's episode, but I feel like Matthew and I got Barrow trauma in the 5 spot just by being like, it's such a unique game, guys, and no one else is going to have it on the list. And I stand by it.
So maybe that's our qualifier this year, is that we just strip every single game that is in the mainstream, and our top 5 is just...
That would have been a very fun theme dream to come to an episode being like, you have to pick. We have to get a list of 5 that isn't nominated on anyone else's.
Yeah.
So as soon as it makes like an IGN or a Game Trailers or a VGA's, it's like we can't do it
Disqualified.
anymore.
Sorry, I don't care that you put 40 hours into the game or 100 hours into Metaphor. It doesn't matter. It's gone.
You've played the best. Now play the rest.
Okay.
Interesting approach to game of the year.
Yeah. And also these games.
Gamers everywhere, we have a very important job to do, and that is to make our top 12 list into a top 5 list.
Top five.
That's right. Our list of 12 is Astrobot, Balatro, Metaphor, Refantasio, Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erd Tree, Prince of Persia and the Lost Crown, Helldivers 2, Animal Well, Deadlock, Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, V Rising, Factorio, Space Age, and Yellow Taxi goes vroom. It's a good list.
Oh man, what a list.
Yeah. And like, there's a lot of that hasn't been said yet. By the end of this episode, we will shout out our honorable mentions or our top 5 or top 10, our own personal top 5 or top 10 lists if anyone else made one. But yeah, like there's a lot of games that came out this year. And then as I'm looking at this, like I know at the beginning of the show, I said there's a lot of, pretty good games, but not a lot of pretty great games. I don't know. There's a lot of great games on this list, even I would say on this top 12. So it was a good year.
There's a lot of games that consumed my time. Like I'm on my second playthrough of Astrobot. So while Astrobot wasn't necessarily a long game, and it is a long game, but it's not like 100 hours.
It's like 10 hours.
It's just if you run through it.
Yeah.
But like
Truly.
it's just consuming my time.
Truly, I appreciate one of the things I appreciated about Astrobot was that it did not overstay its welcome.
Totally,
I got all the bots, and then I was like, cool. I didn't platinum it, but I'm like, I'll probably go back and platinum it at some point.
I think as games change once again, I think we're getting back to a place where it's just like, I want a game that knows what it wants to be and that it's focused in its vision instead of just throwing just mechanics after mechanics and like in the kitchen sink and being like, here's a bunch of padding for a game that does not need it.
I want to go a year without playing a game where I have to collect shit off the ground to craft.
Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I'm looking at you.
Dude. Man, learn how to pace your game for Christ's sake. My God.
Talk about that later. But I'm just going to say right now, that was my game I was looking forward to the most in this year was Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And as you can see, not on this list here. So that's saying something. All right. So we got to narrow this down to a top 5. We've already talked a lot about our feelings, and I'm sure we'll have more to discuss. But let's star nominations for further consideration. We'll start with Angus. Oh, what do you got?
I got the easiest job here. I'm going to star Astrobot.
Excellent. Astrobot is starred. Let's go with Matthew. Star one that isn't one of your own.
For sure. Helldivers 2.
Great. Ethan.
I'm going Metaphor.
Refantasio?
Oh, sorry. Let me say the whole name.
I always forget that it has
Refantasio.
I always forget that it has a subtitle.
I don't know if that, like, I really love that game, but I'm not sure if the title was the
I can actually give you some info on that title. I went on a deep dive about this thing. It's fascinating.
Okay. Yeah. You want to do
later.
That? Later. Okay.
Later, when we get into it.
Okay. Let's see. For myself, I want to star. Oh, this is easy. Balatro. Okay, so we have Astrobot, we have Balatro, Helldivers 2, and Metaphor Refantasio that is starred on our list. Anything else that we want to star? And I feel like with a lot of these games in the Game of the Year episode, we might want to even just, as we say goodbye to games, just say our final piece with it before we completely cut it off the list. But for now, is there anything else that you want to star that can include one of your own?
I mean, I'll always take an opportunity to gush about Space Age or Factorio Space Age.
Do it. Let's do it.
I'll star it.
I think this is the year that we really fight for our babies to be represented on the list, you know? So, Ethan, is there anything else that you want to star, including one of your own?
I don't know. I guess when I started talking about Yellow Taxi Goes Room, I was kind of like, I was getting the feels in me again. I'm like, I want to star that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
That seems like a really cool game.
Now, I'm looking at Ethan's side of the list here, and
Oh, here we go. Here
I'm
we go.
saying that none of it should count. No.
That's what I thought. That's why I nominated it. Okay, bye, guys.
Because it doesn't have the semicolon Refantazio attached to it. Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, I think, is kind of like a thing that I'm looking at. And I just want to know if it should be discussed more. Matthew, Ethan, what do you think?
Ethan, start us off.
I nominated this with the with the thought of, if we are, I understand the idea that is not extremely different. It is not incredibly different from Elden Ring. It is more Elden Ring, which Elden Ring in itself is a great game. So that's kind of partially why I'm like, if Elden Ring is great, this
It won our
DLC
game
was
of
great.
the year.
It won our game of the year. This is more of that, so I can totally understand this being someone's game of the year. It's not my game of the year. It's actually not even on my top 5, but I think the important part of this and why I nominated it really is that the difference in this is just like the scope and the breadth of this DLC compared to other DLCs that I've experienced. A lot of the time it's a couple hour experience and things. They add like a couple levels or maybe a new mechanic to try out in the original game, or expand on something that maybe they left it out of the original game and they just added it into this one. I don't think they did that in, I don't know, Matthew, what did they do that in this case? Was this supposed to be in the original game? Do you know?
Like cut content?
Yeah.
I don't recall there being any rumors about this being cut content. There was rumors about other areas not being fully explored, but I'm
okay.
Yeah. No, I think Shadows of the Erdtree truly was like its own fully realized concept. I don't know if it was rehashed from anything left behind.
Okay. So that's also a boon to this then, because it's not cut content, so not just they like polish it up and release it or anything like that. This is like a new fleshed out continuation, or like, I guess, interlude in the original story and things like that, trying to weave it in to fill in some blanks in the Elden Ring lore, if anyone knows a lot about that. So yeah, that's why I kind of nominated it. Not necessarily because I thought the gameplay was incredibly different, or like I said, they added some new mechanics from the combat point of view and things, but no, it's nothing crazy, I would say. Probably like Factorial Space Age or Monster Hunter Iceborne or any of these other kinds of games. But yeah, I think the size of it was enough for me to nominate it.
To add on to that, I think if someone were to have not played Elden Ring by this point, Shadows of the Erdtree is the fully realized concept of it. The 5 new weapon types that in are truly unique weapon types within the scope of the Souls-like games. Not the Soulsborne, including like the Bloodborne and Sekiro, because those have faster paced combat styles. Dark Souls has always had slower, more methodical combat, and these 5 new combat types that they added in Shadows of the Erdtree open up that faster paced combat, fully realizing the diversity of fighting styles amongst all of From Software's games, which is just a really long-winded way of saying that there is now a little bit of something for everyone. At no point are you going to be like, oh, this is cool, I wish there was more of that. Everything that kind of introduced in the base game is now a full-fledged concept now. There are some legitimate issues with balancing with some of these new things that were added, but I mean, that's true for any RPG. I don't know if we can pin that right on From Software. But going back to what Ethan said, I don't know if Shadows of the Erdtree changed it up enough to say, yes, this is a new paradigm of what Elden Ring presented. One of my biggest gripes I had with the game was that at some point I'm like, I feel like I've already done this. Like outside of finding the new stuff, there was a lot of times where I was finding stuff I already had, and in some cases I was finding stuff that was worse than what I already had. And I was just like, well, it was nice to find something, but if I'm not getting stuff that is legitimately exciting me, why am I even doing this? And that happened more than once. It happened more than I was comfortable with, considering what this expansion was advertised as.
Okay. Well,
Totally.
that seems like, a celebration of Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, but also like it's probably not going to make our top 5, so we don't need to
I
start.
wouldn't say so.
Okay, I just wanted to like give it its, due, because it is one of the games that was nominated for the Game Awards Game of the Year, so I feel like it needed a little extra there.
It won in 2022.
Yep.
And in the hypothetical next year episode of this podcast that won't be recorded, it'll probably win again.
Well,
when they do their multiplayer one.
Night Rain?
Yeah.
Night Rain, is
Night
that what it's
Rain.
called? that
Whatever it's called.
multiplayer Elden Ring's coming out, so that's going to be
Also,
That's
interesting.
Yeah, that seems neat.
that's a wild idea.
It's a wild thing. I can't believe that's even a thing. Okay, cool. Let's see here. That was a lot of talking about Elden Ring. Is there anything else that we're looking at here that we want to make a bigger case for? I feel as though surely maybe one of the Metroidvanias can make it on here. I feel very strongly about Prince of Persia, but I also love Lorelei and the Laser Eyes quite a bit because I feel like nobody really talks about it. Or like, you know, people who are plugged into games a lot, I guess, have heard about that game, but like a lot of normies out there have not heard about a game like Lorelei, and a lot of puzzle games aren't usually put on these types of lists. So I kind of want to maybe make a case for that too.
Are you starring Lorelei and the Laser Eye then?
I don't know. It's that or Prince of Persia, because Prince of Persia is higher on my list personally.
I'll say I did play Prince of Persia. I beat the game, so I do
nice.
have stuff to talk about with that.
In a good way, or is it in a way that we should?
In a meh way, to be honest.
meh way. Oh, okay.
It was kind of mid for me.
Oh my gosh.
Actually, no. Okay, I'll take that back. It wasn't mid. It was good. It was a good game. It didn't end up blowing me out of the water, or looking back on it, it's fine. It's good.
Okay.
I'll tell you what. I will eliminate one of my own nominations just to make this whole process easier.
All of your nominations.
I'm going to go ahead and say V Rising. I can tell it's not going to make the top 5. I personally had a great time with it. Highly recommend it, especially in the instance of you're going to play with like 2 or 3 dedicated, or even one. You're just going to play it with a friend. I haven't played it publicly with other players, so I don't know what that's like, but highly recommend it as a great experience. You know, and it's got an ending too. Like I'm like we're very close to beating the last boss, and Sarah and I are both like, well, once we beat the last boss, we're not going to like keep building our castle. So, you know, it's nice. I would say that's a great experience for people who are looking for that. And with that, I have to say V Rising, more like despising.
Yeah.
Ow.
Yeah.
You hate it?
No, shit. More like A. Because it's like an upside down V. Look, I haven't thought about this. I do improv. But yeah, no, V Rising. Oh, okay, wait. V Rising, more like V by sing.
You do improv.
Yeah,
I do improv. Yeah. So bye.
You really got it on that last one there.
Thanks. I really felt like I nailed it.
In a show of solidarity, Animal Well, as fun of a game as it was, and if you are a platforming purist, I think you will enjoy it. Because it is like a pure platforming experience, I also don't know if it really did anything to elevate the platform experience. It was new, it was unique, but it was unique in the sense that I just hadn't seen a lot of its concepts in a while. But it isn't like this is new territory necessarily. The concept that puzzles could span multiple frames of this world was great. I love that as a concept, but even then, like that has been a thing in the 3D space and the modern gaming world for years. Like this isn't anything new. It's just refreshing to see it with that Super Nintendo splash of paint on it.
Mm-hmm. I think the thing with Animal Well as well is like a thing that made it stand apart was that there is like, I don't know, like no tutorial for the game, right? It's just like you just get thrown in and you just start plucking away and touching everything in the environment and trying to just see what happens kind of thing, which is why I think people gravitated towards it.
There's also no stakes to the game. If you die in Animal Well, you just sort of get popped back to a little starting point within that frame. Sorry, for those who aren't familiar with Metroidvanias, you're normally exploring the world on a frame-by-frame basis. So you load into the frame, which is like your current view, and you'll see that entire view of that area. And then when you reach the border of that frame, you load into another frame where it's either a continuation of what you were doing or it's a new thing. Play the game, so you'll understand when you play it. In most Metroidvanias, when you die, you get bounced back to a checkpoint. In Animal Well, when you die, you just get bounced back to a set point within that given frame. So you're never having to trek back to the challenging point that you died at. You take another crack at it. There's no loading screens. And that was something that I truly appreciated because, as Tuong said, it can be challenging at times. You're going through these absolute gauntlets of platforming hell sometimes where you're having to nail these jumps. And if you miss, you died. But once again, you just sort of get bumped back to a little safe point, and then you continue, you try again. It is probably the lowest stakes I've had in a Metroidvania type in a long while. Okay. You can experiment without fear of punishing consequence.
All right. So goodbye, Animal Well.
Animal Well, more like Animal Well, maybe next time.
Ooh, that's
Okay,
good. I
that's
like
pretty good.
that.
That's
You
pretty
do it, bro. That's pretty good.
Or here, I'll try it the way Angus would. Animal, well, more like animal by.
Yep, nailed it. Nailed it.
All right. So just to remind the audience, we have Astrobot, Balatro, Helldivers 2, Metaphor, Refantasio, Factorio, Space Age, and Yellow Taxi goes Vroom. That are 6-starred. I feel like I think I'm okay with cutting the Metroidvanias off of the list now that we've had a little bit of a discussion on it. Like, I really like Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, but like hearing that Ethan thought it was just good, not, you know, I understand where he's coming from, because like I mean, once again, like the story is just kind of whatever kind of thing. But like when I think
I can let you know what I think about it.
yeah, let's hear it.
Please.
Yeah, so I was excited to try this game. It was the first game I played this year, and thinking about, I really enjoy the Metroidvania genre, as I've discovered over the last couple of years of doing these podcasts, actually. This one just felt like, okay, first off, there was a lot of bugs for me for some reason. I was playing, like, I think you can only play it on the Switch, right? Is it only available on Switch or no?
No. I think it's on multiple.
Okay.
I played it on the Switch as well, though.
Okay. Did I play it on the Switch or was it on the PS5? I forget. I played on a console, and there was tons of bugs for some reason for me. There was like
weird.
Old cutscenes would play later in the game for me for some reason.
wow.
I would get stuck at checkpoints. Like I wasn't able to like leave the room. There was one point where in a cutscene, a pretty pivotal cutscene, there was like tons of just like pop in and pop out, and like the background went away, and there was like weird stuff going on. That doesn't really take away from like what I felt about the game, but just wanted to add that. I don't know if anyone else experienced, or if you experienced that tongue at all, but
I
just
don't
put that out into the
recall
world.
that, but I do somewhat recall that at the beginning of the game, some people experienced something like that. I did not.
Okay, well, that's good. And then I'm glad you didn't, and it's only on me then. The combat was
you
good.
did.
Yeah, exactly. The combat was good. I definitely enjoyed the ability to like combo, be able to like just smash on square. It gets you one combo. Square, hold square, square is like a different thing. You can pop them up, juggle them, and things like that. It really itched that fighting game combo system that I mean, I love that stuff, and I was waiting for Tekken 8, so that was great. But in the end, it kind of just felt like I found a rhythm. I found a way to fight the enemies that I liked and that I just kind of stuck with, and that's just how I kind of went through the game. It didn't really, for me, it didn't feel like I was rewarded for experimenting with different kind of play styles or anything like that. There was the traversal was good. It was like fluid. It was cool to like jump around and stuff like that. But I felt like running between areas, it felt like the save points and the teleportation points were very far away from each other. So I'd be going through a part of the map and stuff like that. I would die, get sent back, and then I'm like, well, shit, I really do have to run from a really far distance. Or if I'm like trying to, like you said, go back to a certain point after I get a new ability or a new upgrade to like, I get the double jump or the air dash and stuff, and going back to one of those spots that I agree was super innovative, to be able to take a screenshot to look at that spot to be like, can I use this new ability here? But when getting there was the problem for me, was that these checkpoints were so far away from a lot of these new areas to access that it just really, it felt like a grind to me to run through the areas. And that's really not what I want to play. Not really what I want to experience in a Metroidvania. I will say that, and the coolest part, I think for me, the boss battles were cool. The final boss is really cool. There was one stage that was super, super unique, and I really loved it. Was that like Raging Sea level?
Oh yeah, that was cool.
Where
That's the one that sticks with me. Yeah,
same here. That was super cool. So, Angus, you're talking about the freeze mechanic in Astrobot, where the cards are like flung at you, you pause time, you jump on them. This was a whole stage of that. That was like
cool.
this. It was like a sea battle. All these like tall ships getting blown up in the middle of this storm, and it was like frozen in time. So there's like parts of the ships exploded, and you could jump on the different pieces of wood to get onto the ship and stuff like that. Lightning was striking, so you couldn't touch that. You have to go around it in a certain way. That was a really, really cool part of the game, but that was honestly the only really, truly great part that I remember from it, unfortunately.
No, I think that's all fair. I mean, I played it like almost a year ago at this stage.
Right.
So it's kind of hard to remember all that stuff. I can't remember the checkpointing as much as you, but I did like, what sticks with me was, at least for me, I found like even if things were a bit far away, that it like you as the player was able to kind of zip through, or you were given the tools to zip through the frame by frame so quickly that didn't bother me as much. But just like a lot of Metroidvania games, like there is like always a fair amount of backtracking that's built into the game. So but what I did like about it compared to others was I thought the comboing and the combat was good. Like I felt like more badass, and like it was just like, I guess maybe like for me, I'm just like, oh, cool. Like Prince of Persia is cool again. And that was already like a bonus. I don't know. Maybe that all contributed to the overall experience. But we don't have to keep it here among all these other things. I just wanted to give it its shout out.
Shout out Prince of Persia.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. So does that mean it's getting...
I think so. Like at this point, like if I were to fight for any of my other games, I think Lorelei is much more unique and has more to offer than Prince of Persia.
Put a star on that shit.
I'm going to star Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, and Prince of Persia and the Lost Crown. Well, bye.
Hey, man.
Prince of Persia, more like Prince of perhaps you'll get a better crack at it next time.
Prince of Persia and the Lost Frown.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, just cut something together. Pick
I like
Prince of Persia and the Last Place.
Oh,
oh shit.
There's one more that I wanted to talk about. I don't know if it's going to dethrone anything. I did want to just take 2 more seconds to talk about Deadlock.
Yeah, please.
And how I had a really good time playing it, and I could see it becoming like a pretty... I genuinely think a game that didn't get nominated, but will probably come up in someone's honorable mentions, Marvel Rivals. I played a bit of that and was like, holy shit, if this had a mode that was like the Deadlock MOBA, this would be like fucking next level. So I have a feeling Deadlock is going to be one of those things where it's like, we're going to see other games ripping it off. Kind of like how I was talking about Balatro is kind of setting this trend amongst indie games. I think Deadlock is kind of breaking... It's not ultimately breaking new ground because there are other third-person MOBAs, but I think the way it does certain things, even with like the zip lines or the rails to get around and some of the other mechanics and stuff like that, and the item system, I think a lot of people are going to be like cheating off Deadlock's homework. I think
100%. I agree. I think I know where you're going with that. It's also like, it was a weird... I kind of talked to you a little bit before the podcast. Like, I think this is probably... It's a weird game to nominate because it really isn't finished. It's not even out. Can't even say it's early access, to be honest. It's an alpha. So I am totally okay with it. Yeah, not being on our list this year, but I'm going to go on record and say, our future in another timeline when we continue these podcasts, it would be number 1 in the future.
I could see that, like the 2028, 2028, 2029. It's like, holy shit, Deadlock finally fully released 1.0, and it's amazing. All games are Deadlock now.
It should be noted that Valve releases good games. Like
they just do.
Yes. Team Fortress 2 is still one of the most popular shooters.
Except that the card game, the Artifact, like it was a...
Oh, I don't remember that.
Well, they put it out, and then apparently the people who played it did like it, but then they're like, it just didn't hit the way that they wanted to. They're like, shut it down, and you can't... I don't think you can get it anymore.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Artifact.
Oh yeah, no, it's still on Steam.
Is it? Okay.
But it's mixed reviews. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's an interesting approach that Valve has taken here with Deadlock. Just to stick with this topic for another moment, because we've talked a lot about the landscape that Deadlock exists within. It's a MOBA. That's an oversaturated market. It's also, for lack of a better term, it is technically a hero shooter, which is also an oversaturated market. But as we pointed out again, it's not done development. So to release it this early, to get people in, that allows you to sink your hooks in. This is credit to Valve, but I'm going to use negative language. It's insidious in how they're doing this, because like you release it and people are like, well, this isn't good. And Valve can say, well, it's not done yet.
It's not done yet.
Yeah. Come back, check on it in 6 months. And then you check on it in 6 months, it's better, but it's still not fun. It's like, well, it's not done yet. And then 4 years from now, you're like, wow, this is fun. It's like, yeah, see, you had to give it some time.
It's almost like Concord might have benefited from a similar model.
It is such an interesting approach to game design to say to your fans, all right, here's a game that we're in no way done. give us your feedback.
I think very few publishers are able to do something like that. Like Valve has all the money in the world to be able to kind of like roll out something like this and you know, be in development for, I don't know, a decade.
Yeah, one Steam sale and they've made all their money.
Yeah.
If there was a company that could pull this off, it would be Valve. I wouldn't trust Ubisoft to do this because Ubisoft would have one season of like negative feedback and they'd be like, okay, scrap it.
Yeah.
But Valve is good. I trust Valve to stick this out.
Yeah. That's cool. But should we cut Deadlock then? It's not a lock for the list. Is that what we're saying?
Time to take a dead walk
There
down
you
the
go.
aisle.
That's
You're
the
getting
Angus
married.
I know. Pun king over here.
I don't know if I like
This
that
guy
title.
loves puns. Look at this guy.
This guy loves bits.
I
This
really
guy,
think there's a bit more to what I do than that, but okay.
this guy goes into the office and he just does bits and skits, guys.
Oh God!
Skits.
Look, I don't know if I've ever enjoyed being around the office funny guy once. As someone, I think I've got a pretty good sense of humor. You know, I do improv and stuff like that. But I've never, anytime someone's like, "Oh, get a load of Carl over here. He's the office funny guy." I've never liked Carl. I've never found him funny.
Carl
Not to
does
sound
humor.
pretentious.
Yeah,
Carl just rips on his wife when she's not around.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, Carl, you sound like you hate your wife, man.
Carl's like, skibbity toilet.
Carl's a millennial or a Zoomer.
That just happened. Thanks, Carl.
Okay, I think we have our games to be actually talked about here, which are all starred, the rest of them. So we've just cut Prince of Persia, V Rising, Animal Well, Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, and Deadlock. The remaining nominations are Astrobot, Lorelei, Balatro, Helldivers, Metaphor, and Yellow Taxi Goes Vroom, and Factorio Space Age. So that's 7. We need to cut 2 of these. Should we do locks just to see where we're at with this?
I'm locking in Metaphor.
All right, let's do the locks here. Locks have to be unanimous, and if someone hesitates, we just move on. Let's talk about Metaphor first. Lock or no lock? Lock.
That's a slight hesitation from me.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Tom, were you going to say lock?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, fine. I'll lock it. Metaphor's good. I like it.
Okay.
I like it. I like it. I like it. I'm sorry. Fantasio. I want to hear about what that name means if it's not a spoiler.
Yeah.
I'll give another hint before we get into it. Esperanto. Let's continue.
Whoa. Now you're just saying words.
Yeah, I don't know Italian.
Angus is Googling what Esperanto is.
No, I've heard it's a language, right?
Yeah,
I love the
yeah.
role of Angus today, who's just Googling how to pronounce things.
Oh yeah, you're gonna have to edit out me typing in the background.
He's the guy in the van.
Balatro.
Beluga.
Let's
Okay.
do Astrobot. Lock or no lock?
Lock.
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 Okay. I know Lorelei's not a lock because I'm the only one that played it, so maybe I'll be able to make a case later. Balatro, lock or no lock?
Lock.
I'll lock it.
I'd lock it, but
Ooh, right. Ethan
hesitant.
hasn't played it.
I never played it, so I don't know what my role like.
That's
What I
okay.
get.
That's
I
a
feel
good
like we
point.
haven't talked enough about it, and I do want to hear why Ethan didn't play it. So
No, it's a good call.
Helldivers 2, lock or no lock? Lock.
Hesitant.
Okay.
I'm the hater this year, bro.
That's okay.
That's
I'm
fine.
an antagonizer.
It's because no fighting game made the list this year, and
I thought you were going to
mad
nominate
about
it.
it. You're mad about it.
I left it to you.
Factorio Space Age might.
I'm going to be my own hesitant. I'm not going to lock it.
Cool.
So should we cut it?
No.
I think there's a couple of voices with it. I'm not going to name names. There are a couple of people who are hesitant about the factory builder genre. I would like to speak more about it because once again, Factorio is one of my favorite games. I've never had a chance to speak about it on this podcast, so I would like to give it its credit.
Okay. Cool.
That said, I'm not expecting it to win Game of the Year in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, sure. Let's leave it starred for that conversation. And Yellow Taxi Goes Vroom, lock or no lock?
So, after hearing Matthew say Factorio is one of his favorite games, there is already that space for platformer in our list right now, which is a lock of Astrobot. Yellow Taxi Goes Vroom kills its aesthetic. It kills what it's going for. It is nailing it so hard. There's not too much else I can really talk about it. But at the same time, like, you know, I don't want to just drop it right now because we haven't really heard too much more about Lorelei. You know, Factorio Space Age is. You know what? Never mind. Continue on.
I get what you mean, though.
Yeah. No, I think it can still hang for now.
Yeah.
So we have
Let's
two
talk
locks. We have 2 locks.
Astrobot and
Astrobot And Refantasio.
That's right.
Refantasio.
And whatever other word that Matthew said. That
Esperanto.
Esperanto.
Esperanto. Sorry.
Part of the GTA.
Hey, can we get one more word from you, Matthew? You have anything else?
Yeah, give me exactly 1 minute here.
right, 60 seconds on the clock.
Hieronymus Bosch.
Oh,
Last
Hieronymus.
name's Hieronymus Bosch.
Hieronymus Bosch?
Hieronymus Bosch.
Wait. Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay. Great.
Huh.
Thank you for saying that out loud and leaving me with nothing else to say.
Hey, you wanted a word, bud.
Yeah. That's a hard one to yes and. Okay.
I thought you do improv.
Apparently, I'm not very good at it. So,
that makes a
Astrobot
lot of
and
sense.
Metaphor are locked. And then I feel like Balatro was close. Helldivers was close. Factorio, Lorelei, and Yellow Taxi I feel like only one of us have played each of those games. You know, like one of them's my baby, one of them's Matthew's, and one of them's Ethan's. Angus doesn't have any game babies on here.
There's no children.
You
I have a
heard
real
on this
baby.
podcast, Angus hates babies.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just like to think of it as that, like, the games that I, not to be too mainstream, but the games that I really liked, a lot of people played.
Yeah.
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 You are quintessentially top of the bell curve. You are.
Oh yeah. I'm a real lowest common denominator.
Yeah.
I'm pour that slop.
Angus,
give
right
me
after
more.
this,
Yummy,
gonna be
yummy.
playing Fortnite and then
Yeah.
logging into Roblox after all those.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta go watch Red One, the movie designed for me.
I watched that.
Oh shit, The Rock's in it, dude. Dude, I fucking love The Rock.
Let's
I
talk
love that
about,
he doesn't play it. Sorry.
Let's talk about The Rock some more.
Yeah.
Why doesn't he have a game on this? Post Malone's getting a game next year. Why don't we get
Oh
it?
yeah.
I'll give it time, bud.
Okay. I want to talk about, I think the elephants in the room are Balatro and Helldivers too. I feel like they have a good chance to make this list, either one of them or both of them. So I feel like let's talk about Balatro. Ethan, you have stuff to say?
I just didn't play it. It didn't interest me. The idea that it's a roguelike deck builder sounded really interesting to me after, Slay the Spire or Inscription and stuff. The idea that it is just poker hands, and I know there's probably a little bit more than just saying, oh, it's just you're playing poker and like watching the numbers go up. But
Yep.
that's all it really seemed to me. And they're saying it's addictive, it's great. So I didn't play it. I didn't want to shell out the money because I really wasn't sure if I would enjoy it. I'm happy to hear there is a demo, which I could probably go and play after, like just download it and play it after this. And then who knows, maybe in a couple months I'll be like, fucking shit, that game is so good.
Yeah, just edit in him now. Just like, oh, guys, I'm fucked.
Yeah.
I was wrong.
Addendum.
I want to.
I want to put as much buffer between us introducing this topic and Angus getting to speak. So with Balatro, one of the things I truly appreciate it is the perfect game if you like to watch stuff. Balatro does not require your attention all the time. That once you sort of figure out what your game plan is, you know what cards you're looking for. If you play the game, you'll know what I'm alluding to. I'm not going to go into the full strategy behind Balatro, but like once you know what your game plan is, you don't really need to pay 100% attention to the game. And it's great if you love to listen to podcasts, if you like to listen to audiobooks, if you like to watch TV in the background. It is the perfect companion game to that. On the flip side, if you're someone who likes to devote their attention to the game, this is where Balatro, I think, falls short, because Balatro isn't 100% engaging, in my opinion. There's no need for you to pay all your attention to it. And that can be a mark against it if you're that type of gamer who likes to be immersed in their game. There is no immersion in Balatro. There's no larger story. There's no meta narrative that you're doing. It is, as Ethan said, it is just you play the cards, the points go up. And if the points go up high enough, you get to play more of the game. Like that's it. It's very good at that. I don't want to have that come up short. It is probably the best game I played in recent history where the points go up, and I enjoy that. But at the end of the day, that is what it is. Like if your points don't get as high as they need to be, you start over and you try to get your points to go up higher. Like that's the game. So for those who are looking for an added layer of depth to their games, I'm not sure Balatro would scratch that itch. Allow me to bring up for a moment Inscription, which is a game where you play cards and you build a deck, but there is a story behind it. There's a mystery to unravel. There is a story to find there. This is not that. You're not going to be that player who finds the mystery behind Balatro. No, it's the numbers go up. That's it.
Yeah.
I have lots to say about everything you just said. So, first of all, like, you know, I am a very story kind of, I love a game with a story, and Balatro has done none of that. And despite all that, I found this sounds so stupid and cheesy, but I think the stories that you get from each run is the story of the game. But like, I feel like that's true. And I have a hard time watching a TV show or listen to a podcast while I play other like games and stuff like that. I was fully into Balatro every single time. I'm listening to that soundtrack the entire time and I'm just in it. And I think like, yeah, the stories of what jokers you're getting from the shop every time, making those decisions, or am I going to skip this blind to get the little bonus that I get from skipping the blind to the next level? Or should I play this hand? I don't know how to describe this, but like, I feel like Balatro to me scratched an itch for like a roguelike deck game that like I loved Slay the Spire. And one of the things that I didn't like about Slay the Spire was like it took so long to get to the later end of Slay the Spire that by the time you got there, sometimes you get really fucked by the RNG. But Balatro games, like I think like what, like if you play the entirety of all 8 rounds, I guess it was like what, half an hour, Angus? What do you think?
Yeah, probably.
So like the time to do that is like quite like, I don't know, manageable. But I think a thing that people get really scared and hung up about with Balatro who have never played it is that, I don't know, they don't resonate with poker at all, or like this, the you know, the poker cards or just regular deck building cards and stuff like that. And I think that kind of sells it short because it literally all it does is use poker hands. That's the only thing that's close to poker in this game is it uses poker hands. And they even tell you what those hands are. You can look up what, I don't know, what a full house is and all that kind of stuff. But that's the only thing that's close to poker. And the rest of it is Balatro. There's no other game like that. It just uses the same cards and that's it. And I think like you making the decisions of what jokers to buy and how to rearrange them to get like top score and all that stuff is all part of the Balatro experience. And I don't know, I found it very, very enjoyable. And like, yeah, I've tried to convince a few people to play it. And usually the hang up is that like, I don't like poker. And I'm like, well, you're not playing poker.
That's not really poker.
That's not what this game is. That's not what this game is. Yeah. Angus, anything else to add?
Yeah, real quick. Balatro does not have a story. I would also argue, like, I loved Inscription. It was our game of the year in 2021. I would argue it has little to no replay value, whereas Balatro has, like, maybe not infinite, but like I'm trying to beat every difficulty with every deck right now and really enjoying that. But all I'll say with Balatro is the thing, it's really hard to sell people on without showing it to them. That's what I've found, to the point where I bought it for my dad on Steam and I sent it to him. And he fired it up for like 1 minute and then closed it. And then I went over there and was like, hey, did you try that game I sent? He's like, no. And I was like, can I bring it up on the TV and we could play it together? He's like, yeah, sure. So we sat there with like a mouse and keyboard on the couch, put it on the TV. And like, as we're playing it, like we're getting a couple hands in, I'm piloting it basically. And then at a certain point, I just started asking him, what hand should I play? What hand should I play? And he started getting more and more invested in it. And the same thing happened. Sarah had a bunch of friends over and she brought it up on the Switch because we have it on every console now, basically. And so she brought it up on the Switch, and one of her friends was just like, yeah, one of her friends literally was like, I don't really play poker. I don't know cards or anything like that. And they started being like, once they saw how the jokers worked, of like, oh, every odd numbered card gives you this. He's like, oh shit, okay. And he's one of those guys, when he plays a game, he like min maxes. He like wants to like optimize everything. The next day he came over. We had friends over a couple days in a row. He came over the next day. He had been up until 3 a.m. playing Balatro on his phone. I know.
His wife left him.
Well, but it was one of those things where, and I feel weird even being like, it's super addictive. I do want to call out that like it's a solo dev, and I think Tuong and I were talking about this, but like the dev has something like in their will where it's like, when I die, no one's allowed to use Balatro to make like a real world slot machine.
Yeah,
like
exactly,
they're aware like how addictive it is, and I don't know. I'm trying to say. Yeah, I don't know. I just really enjoyed it. It's a fun time, but it is truly one of those things where it's like, it's so good that there's a demo. Play the demo. If you're at all curious, play the demo. Try it out and see. And just it gets so much crazier from there. It's also, I've been playing a lot of Magic the Gathering lately, and I was talking to people about that, where this is nothing like Magic the Gathering, but like any other deck builder, there's this moment where you've been building this deck and it clicks and it just goes off, and it's like, fuck yes, and it feels so good. But yeah, it's
the
like
only like downside of the game is that yes, there is going to be some runs where you're just kind of luck is not on your side and you get a bad run, or like you get fucked by like there's like boss blinds in this game. So like you do a small blind, a big blind, and then like a boss blind.
yeah.
And when you hit the boss blind, sometimes whatever strategy that you came up with, like, maybe you were going all in on 2 pairs. Like that was
now it's like now you can't play repeat hand types. Well,
exactly.
shit. Okay.
Or you need to have like a ridiculous score to like get the boss blind. Sometimes that's kind of frustrating, but I think the game more than makes up for it in all its other aspects.
To add on to that, just one last point about this game's design. For every shortcoming the game has, it does have an in-game mechanic that allows you to bypass it. So in the case of what Tuong was saying about the boss blinds, how they will conflict with your strategy, there are items in the game that you can buy that will allow you to re-roll problematic objectives. Now, I'm not saying that that's the saving grace of these tricky mechanics, but it shows the level of attention the developer has, where even they sort of like, oh, if someone's playing strategy A and I introduce the objective that nullifies strategy A, there should be an item that allows you to work around that. And so to that end, there's a lot of attention to detail by the dev, certainly more attention to detail than a lot of big name developers seem to have for their games these days. Yeah, there are frustrating moments, 100%, but there are still ways to mitigate those frustrating moments once you get good at the game.
It's
probably
almost like Tetris.
You mean T-Try?
T-Try. It's almost like T-Try.
Yeah.
I would say it's the modern day T-Try.
Okay, so
I don't know.
did everyone else? Everyone else is like they love this game.
I liked it. I
liked it.
Angus really
Tuong?
enjoy it. Yeah, I it's number 5 on my personal list.
It is number 2 on my personal list.
I bring this up every year. I'm a dad gamer now. It's a solid dad game.
Solid dad game.
Yeah, I can understand that. So I feel like it could be on the top 5, but maybe not like top 3 games.
I don't think it's cracking. I think it's 4, maybe 5,
something like that.
It's just so impressive that like such a small game even made it to like the final rounds of the Game Awards and it got its flowers and all that stuff. So I
won a couple awards. Yeah,
it's something to be celebrated about for sure.
So it could be like a soft like lock for top 5.
Just a soft lock.
Okay,
Soft
lock. I want
Could it benefit from a little blue pill? Yeah.
Maybe.
I think the other elephant in the room, we should just get right into it, is Helldivers 2. I know,
Helldivers
Ethan,
2.
you had more to say about it?
Yeah, I'm a hater. I played this game when it first came out. I was like, okay, this is fine. This is a lot of the time, like it was fun to play with friends. It was fun to dive in and enjoy that. I felt like a lot of the tension was self-imposed. I didn't really feel there was a lot of consequence for when you lost missions, or if like you didn't collect all the materials and stuff like that, you lose them, but there wasn't really any like carryover to like between missions, I felt. And the combat the combat felt frustrating in some cases. Like I couldn't do exactly what I would want it to do. And I just, it was the kind of game where I felt like in 6 months, I'm not going to be playing this, but I'm going to be, I could find some fun jumping in and seeing what they've added for like an hour or two with some friends and then forgetting about it for another year or something like that. It just didn't grip me the same way that I saw other people absolutely loving this game and stuff like that. And I totally wish I had that experience, but I just didn't really connect with it that much.
It does kind of have the big asterisks on it. I would say like you need to be playing this with friends. I played a little bit with randos. Didn't enjoy it as much, obviously. It's way more fun to play with friends, to get on group chat, to, give each other shit when you blow or when somebody gets left behind at the exfiltration. I get that. I would argue certain things like not a lot of consequences for failing. I would even say that kind of feeds into the theme of the game a bit. There is a satirical carelessness with the loss of human life in this. Yeah. And it's I would say it's built into like so it's just like, oh, we didn't get the thing, who cares? You know what I mean? But there's always more. Did
it even really matter?
No, exactly. Like, it's like, oh, like literally the mission is like, I'm gonna drop down here, I'm gonna raise a flag that's slowly raising that could have just shot right up. It's a slowly raising flag. It's going to play the national anthem, and a little drone is going to film while we desperately try to kill all the robots. So it's like, I get that, and I totally understand that, like, jumping into it day one is very different than 6 months, is very different from a year. You know, it's one of those games that's I think still growing quite a bit. They just added the third enemy faction and a lot of really cool stuff. Like, the differences between the three enemy factions is really cool. Like, you know, like it's nice to jump in and be like, oh, we're gonna play robots tonight. We're gonna, like, okay, we gotta fight them this way. Like, fuck it, let's just go fight some bugs. And bugs is like, I at least I personally, I bring a totally different loadout. I have a totally different mindset.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and it's funny when we drop in and Matthew, like, I think it happened to Matthew last time we played. I picked a bot mission or something like that, and he thought we were playing bugs. So he's like kitted out with like machine guns and stuff like that. He's like, ah, shit. You know, but I get that. It is one of those, like, there's a big asterisk on it, and you kind of have to get lucky, I think, to a certain degree to really get the most out of this game.
To add a couple of things to that, as fun as the game is, I truly, this is probably one of the most fun multiplayer games I've played this year and in recent history. Despite all that, it can be repetitive, because once you have done all of the objectives, like, the objectives don't really change. They're not dynamically created. As Angus said, you're either defending the flag raising up, or you're blowing up the building, or you're doing some other objective, and it's those same objectives over and over. The fun truly does come, as Ethan put it, from the self-imposed limitations. It's like, oh, I'm going to try and do this objective I've done dozens of times with this gun that I hate, and see if I can do it. There is joy to be found in that. Because, as Angus said, if you're playing with friends and the gun you brought truly was abysmal, well, you just shoot your friend in the head, you take their gun, and now you have a better gun. Easy peasy. Or you ask them for it, however you want to do it. The other thing that is a credit to this diverse gameplay is the game is as challenging as you want to make it for yourself. Angus alluded to this earlier in the podcast about having, like, that set top tier build. That still technically exists, depending on the circles you run in, that there are guns and equipment that are just better than other guns and equipment, but you don't have to use it. Like, it's not a requirement. You can get by without even shooting enemies. There is like a quote unquote stealth build where you can just sort of skirt around the bad guys and get stuff done without being involved with them. But it requires that inquisitive mind to want to engage with the game in that way. This game does not advertise these mechanics to you right off the bat. If you go in there and you want to be decked out in the strongest gear, it's very easy to fall into that gameplay rut, and it is not necessarily evident on how to get out of that rut. As I'm making that point, I don't know if I'm saying that's a bad thing or a good thing. I want to bring it up, is that you are given a toolbox. It's up to you to use the tools. Right? Like, the game's not going to force you to use a gun versus a different gun. It's up to you. If you like to engage with games that do that, you're going to have fun. If you like to engage with games where you min-max and you have the best stuff, well, it will get samey and repetitive pretty quickly, because that's not what this game is necessarily. That all said, the rate at which they're releasing new content, they just released new vehicle types, Humvee that you can fit all of your 4-man squad into with a mounted machine gun on the back. Your friends can pop out the passenger windows and shoot guns out. Like, that didn't exist at the beginning of the game. So if anyone who's listening to this podcast and they played Helldivers at release and like, well, this game's not for me, I encourage you to give it another shot, because it is quite literally a different game at this point.
Even like how big a game changer the mechs were when the first mech dropped. I even like,
there's new enemy types.
Yeah. The greatest strength in this game, and I think truly the greatest strength, is the cool emergent moments that are unscripted.
Yes.
Matthew and I were playing. I was getting chased by a bunch of illuminate zombies, and I just hear Matthew on my mic say, like, hit the deck, and I just dive to the ground, and he's got a mech with a minigun, and he slowly turns and just mows the crowd down and, like, saves me. And it's just like, oh, cool, that wasn't scripted. There wasn't like a press square to save your teammate button. You know what I mean? It's just like, I don't know.
No, that's exactly it.
It's very special.
Yeah, and you guys all said it, so we don't have to linger too much longer on it. But I think that is what the strength of the game is. Going back to, like, I don't play multiplayer games really often, and I renewed my PS Plus for this game, and I was the gamer that was playing on, like, the highest difficulty with my cousins, and we're trying to, like, min-max our builds a little bit. But, like, and then I would play with, like, some of my friends who don't usually want to play on that level, and that's fine. We got to bump down the difficulty, and we're still able to have fun. And, like, I think I mentioned this earlier when we started talking about it, was that like you don't have to be the best shooter or twitchy gamer to be good at this game. You could be the guy who, like me, like I was like, I'm gonna have a turret build. I'm gonna be the guy who like does all the objectives, while all like my cousin who like loves to snipe things, he can snipe things. I'll throw down some turrets. I'm gonna build like our protection around us while we do these objectives. I'll do the objectives even. Like I felt like everyone had their like role to play. And when you like put it all together in this really ridiculous things that can happen in this game, like killing your teammates, or like some epic moments where you're like, I just took down like 2 giant bugs and now another one's coming after me. Are you fucking kidding me? Like that stuff is insane. And like also just like the stratagems and how you call them down was just, it feels so good. Anytime you throw down like an airstrike or something like that.
When it just clears out a wave of guys, like just like a strafing run. How hype is it every time you drop from the ship?
So hype.
Yeah. And it's just like,
and the music that drops
gets me
too.
so fucking boom.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just like I know that it's appealing to my lizard brain.
Yeah.
But I'm into it, you know?
But yeah, I think just going back to like, I think you do need a group that wants to play and that will play with you. Cause like you can't.
There's 4 of us.
We could
play a game right now.
We'll have a lot of fun together. But if you are playing with like randos online, I don't think that's very fun. Or if you are playing very intermittently,
I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing for there to be a game, especially in the world of like these forever games we get now that just go on for forever. I don't think it's necessarily bad to have a game in your roster where it's like, yeah, I pick it up every 2 months. I play it a couple nights, and then I let it sit for a minute. And then I come back and I'm like, ah, shit. Like this is to me is like a LAN party game, you know? It's like my friends, we LAN party maybe twice a year. I want to get that number up a bit, but it's like, man, this would be like a must play. We're all in the same room together, play a couple of rounds of that. But I understand it's kind of a different thing than like an Astrobot or like a Metaphor. It is very reliant on the multiplayer aspect of playing.
And I think that's why it should probably make our list, because it is like the multiplayer game that we have on this list.
Tuong, what you said where you're like, this is the best multiplayer game I've played this year and in recent years, I agree. I haven't had this much fun with a multiplayer game in a very long time.
And
maybe since like...
I love a PvE game too. Like it's like, how refreshing. We're all in this together and we're not trying to like, we're not trying to kill each other. It might happen, but we're not trying to.
It might happen. Yeah. I also like that there's friendly fire. You know, it's like, I like that you do kind of need to like pay attention.
An interesting phenomenon where friendly fire from your friends hits different than friendly fire from like a faceless stranger on the internet.
Oh, totally.
Because the amount of times I'll get like beamed in the head by some stranger, like, you moron, versus Angus shooting me in the head. I'm like, oh, you scamp.
Well, it's like we're waiting there, and like Matthew and I are like shooting at each other's feet or like shooting over each other's shoulders. The best was one night we went back to our ships, and there's a stats page, and you can see how many friendly kills you have. And I was like, how many? I have 73. And then one of our friends, he's like, I have 148, and we're like, that's twice as many, man. Anyway,
I think we should lock Helldivers.
I think it sounded like the rest of the group is really into it. I'm fine, like democracy, you know, just like Helldivers, right? For democracy.
yeah, man.
Accept their democracy or else.
God.
One question. Did you 3 play Overcooked, and did you like Overcooked?
I played Overcooked.
3, but I played it. Yep.
I played Overcooked. I enjoyed it, but I didn't get very far in it. It was a bit too stressful for me.
I loved Overcooked. I loved Overcooked.
I should play it again, though. Did you?
Yeah. Because I think this is similar. It kind of, I think I'm a competitive like versus other people kind of guy. I don't know if the PvE element is really that appealing. It's kind of what I'm discovering about myself, discovering things about myself.
That's your journey.
It's your fucking journey, man.
That's what this podcast is for. It's not for the people listening. It's for us.
No, it's for us.
This is therapy.
It's got to be for us, right?
I think that's fair, Ethan. But yeah, this is definitely a PvE game, and that's just how it is.
Yep.
We got 3 other indie games here.
Yeah.
What are we doing with these 3?
Very different.
Can we, like, you know, we can talk forever, and we have been already, but like, can we, like, is Balatro close to being locked? Because I feel like we could lock Balatro, and then we just need one of the indie games to make it here, unless we feel strong enough about, you know.
Here, let me take some of the work off our shoulders.
Sure.
Let me talk about Factorio, and
Please.
then we can get rid of it.
Please.
So a factory builder game. For those who aren't in the know, the idea behind it is that you are doing a repetitive sequence of actions. Let me start with Factorio's bread and butter. You're mining iron ore, you're mining coal. The reason why you're mining these things is because you take the coal to fuel a furnace, you use the furnace to refine the iron ore into steel plates. And that is for like the first 20 minutes of the game, you're just doing that a whole bunch. And you're probably saying, well, that doesn't sound fun, Matthew. But rather early on, you then get to create an automated process where that whole iron plate production is taken care of for you. The only time you need to worry about it in the future is if you need to expand that automation to produce more iron plates to continue your production. And that is the game loop in a nutshell. You will be doing an action manually. The goal is to automate that action so that you can move on to the next manual action to automate it, with the end result being a massive factory that is fully automated. And at that point, all you're really concerned about is locating more raw materials to apply your templates of your finished factory to, then expand your factory further. This will not click with everyone. Angus, I see smirking here. He's like, this doesn't sound like a game at all.
It's just, I love the idea of like the ultimate goal is to not have to play the game anymore.
Well, and it's funny because
I get it, yeah.
On the surface, you're right. Like, why on earth would you want to play a game where the goal is to not play the game? But it is addictive. Once you reach that sort of omniscient level where you're not even your character anymore, you are the zoomed out view of your character. You, like, quite literally, you will pivot from a top down almost, what's the game I'm thinking of? Stardew Valley. It's almost like Stardew Valley at first, where you're like limited to your character and you're having to do all these actions through your character, and you stop doing that. And then it becomes Civilization 6. It is quite literally that pivot where like your character is irrelevant at that point and you're just God and you're laying out your factory and making it as big as possible. And with Space Age, it becomes even cooler because of this added obstacle of the different planets. Each planet that you go to will have a different logistical hurdle to clear, whether it be on how you generate power on that level to power your factory, whether it be the types of enemies you're encountering that inhibit your progress, or it might just be an environmental factor that makes it so your machines don't work right and you need to work around that to make them work right. If you enjoyed Factorio as the base game, then Space Age is just more of that elevated. If you did not enjoy Factorio, the base game, Space Age will do nothing for you. If anything, it will turn you off more. If Factorio or Satisfactory or any of those factory builders do not click with you, Space Age will not change your opinion on that matter. What I will add, though, is if one of the limiting factors to your Factorio experience was progress, you didn't feel like you were progressing fast enough, Space Age fixes that. Space Age's progression system, the way you sort of reach those next milestones, was adjusted and made simplified for Space Age because of those added logistical hurdles on the other planets. So if you liked Factorio, but it wasn't fast enough for you, give it another chance of Space Age. You don't even have to buy the Space Age DLC. The quality of life, there's that word again, quality of life adjustments they made for Space Age are applied to the base game. So you can try the base game again if you already have it. If you're liking what you're feeling there, you can move on to Space Age if that floats your boat, flies your ship, and give it another shot.
Matthew, I'm so happy that you like this type of game. And as I look at screenshots, I just keep going, I would hate this game.
Matthew, I really liked your spiel there. Like, I really liked how you put that all together. It would be hypocritical of me not to point out that when I talk about Balatro and a deck going off, at that point, the deck essentially is playing itself. Like, you've built it.
Yeah.
So I certainly do get the satisfaction of like, I've built this thing, and it's going to do what I've built it to do.
It's
and
like
I can just
trying to
take my hands off it.
build efficiency into your build.
Yeah.
That's all it's like a city builder game in that way. You're trying to make it as efficient as possible, which I totally get as well. So are we cutting Factorio then, Matthew?
I'm seeing 3 blank faces staring back at me here whenever I bring up Factorio. So yes, I acknowledge that this game is not for everyone. Please cut it. But if the idea of playing a game that you can get so good at that you don't need to play it anymore appeals to you, as weird as that may sound, give it a shot. There's a free demo. Give it a shot.
Well, Factorio Space Age, more like Factorio, it's cut age.
Factorio, more like Factory Go.
Okay.
Oh.
No.
For those who play Factorio Space Age, more like its freshness has deteriorated. That's a mechanic in the game. You have to play to understand.
You kind of had to be there.
Can we talk about, so we really only have to choose between Lorelei and Yellow Taxi, and I'm kind of at this point assuming Balatro is going to make our list. I mean, I would fight for it to make our top 5 since
I would as
three
well.
of us
If it was
really
between those three, then yeah, Balatro.
So I'm going to go ahead and lock it because, 3 of us really enjoyed it and one of us didn't play it. But
Lorelei the Laser Eye and Yellow Taxi Go
Goes
Vroom both look so cool, and I wish I'd played both of them.
So I'm in the same boat as Angus. I haven't played either one, but to start the conversation, I would probably have preferred Yellow Taxi Goes Vroom versus Lorelei and the Laser Eyes.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
That's tough.
Ethan, do you have anything more to say about Yellow Taxi that you want to bring up? I have a bit more on Lorelei, but
Honestly, like I was saying earlier, like I described the game perfectly. So there's nothing else.
I've done all I can. I appreciate that.
I remember
Go off the vibes, folks.
I remember you saying that about a Hi-Fi Rush last year. You're like, in the discussion of it, you're like, well, I brought up everything I needed to say about it, and I have nothing else to add.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
If that's any indicative of the game, it does exactly what it needs to do extremely well, and it doesn't need to elaborate on it.
That's essentially what the fight seems to be. It's like you've got this game that is like it's set out to to emulate a time in platforming, and it sounds like it nailed that both in look and feel. And then you've got this other game, Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, and it looks like it's trying to be something like totally original.
Yeah.
And like a new presentation of it. Almost looks a little spooky.
Yeah.
I mean, almost. It looks a little spooky.
It is.
It looks like it's a very interesting way of presenting a diverse concept of puzzles. I won't lie. I really liked Tuong's Zodiac notebook. Weirdly is a selling point for me. I don't know why, but it's tough.
Let me talk about Lorelei a little longer because I have a bit more in me that I want to bring up. But like, yeah, I feel like the mood and setting of Lorelei and just the aesthetic of it is already like a driving force of why I enjoy it, because it's just like what is happening in this world. There's memory games, there's like object recognition type of puzzles that are happening. There's things that you're gonna like there's so many puzzles throughout the entirety of Lorelei that if you can't figure it out, that's okay. There's another puzzle in another room that you can maybe figure out and then come back to another door later and be like, oh, that's what it is. And I feel like in terms of like gaming and just unlocking that part of my brain that I never thought that I had in me kind of thing, that's what's unique about it, is it made me think about this game outside of playing the game. Like every time I was away and not playing this game, I was like, the fuck was that puzzle? Like, how come I can't get it? And then I would like maybe revisit my like crazy scratch notebook of just a bunch of pencil drawings and pen drawings and like being like, okay, well, this is Roman numerals for this. And this is, a Greek for this. And then this symbol is for this. And it honestly, it tickled my brain in such a way that like, I don't get from a lot. Like I love puzzle games. So there's that, but I've not played a puzzle game that's really made me think outside the box and made me think about the game outside of playing it. I'm sure that's what like The Witness did for some people, but again, I didn't play that game. But Lorelei did that for me. And then like you get the added bonus is every time you unlock another door or whatever, you get more of what is even happening in this like very eerie mystery world. Like I played this game over the span of like 4 days and I put like, 25 to 30 hours into it. Like I played it a lot. And a lot of that time, honestly, was not like actually using the controller. It was just me scratching in my notebook and then looking at my files and what information was already given to me and knowing that I already had the answer in my hands. I just haven't put it together for myself yet. And then, there is the exceptions to the rules where I do think there are some puzzles that were like are a little unfair. Like I don't think a lot of people could. Maybe they could, but I couldn't figure it out. No. But like most of the time, every time I thought I like came to the answer to myself, you got that thrill of being like, you fucker, you can't get one over me. And yeah, I think like there's just very inventive puzzles.
I want to ask Matthew, because you and I are the two that haven't played either of these games, right?
Yep.
Looking at these two games, I feel like I'm more interested in playing Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. That being said, I think if I played Yellow Taxi Goes Vroom, I think I'd have more fun playing that.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
They're such
Yeah.
different games, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Yellow
Of
Taxi
course, totally.
Goes Vroom it feels like I'm not gonna say arcade, but it is very like
Totally.
you're moving like an N64 character, like Banjo Kazooie or whatever. Like it's very. You're platforming, you're jumping on stuff, you're getting points and all this stuff. And Lorelei, you can get to a door and you might be looking at that door for like, I don't know, 40 minutes if you're like bad at the puzzle.
But solving a puzzle feels good. You know what I mean? Yeah, so I don't know.
But I do love like the ability to be like, nope, not right now. I can't figure it out. I'm going this way. And most likely you can figure out another puzzle.
In that vein of what these games are, let's look at Yellow Taxi Goes Vroom for a moment. It's a platformer, right? At the end of the day, it's a collectathon platformer. It doesn't break out of that genre from what I've heard Ethan say. So, since it's a platformer, a collectathon, let's compare it to the other collectathon platformer that we already have in our rankings. Can it stand up with Astrobot? Does Yellow Taxi Go Vroom do something different enough from what Astrobot's doing to warrant it also being in the top 5?
And yeah, I knew this would come up eventually. That's kind of why I started going off earlier in this section of the podcast about we already have a platformer that's probably everyone's enjoyed it and played it and will fight for it more than I will probably fight for Yellow Taxi Goes Vroom. But it's weird to say that I think I have taken off every one of my nominations on this podcast this time around. So it's like there's a part of me that's just like, you can't be defeated, bro. Like you can't do it.
I get it. Yeah.
But at the same time, like if we want to, if it's a group list and I bow to democracy, I'd probably take it off and just represent a different kind of game like Lorelei. And I did play Lorelei.
Oh, did you?
Oh, yeah. That's something I never mentioned.
You didn't?
But I did not get very far in it because the puzzles were so difficult for me. And I didn't do the Zodiac Killer. Like,
I think you have to. I think at the beginning of the game, it tells you that you should use a notebook for the game. And I think a knock against the game, though, is that if you do take a break from the game, coming back to it would be difficult. Like you wouldn't know what to do.
If I was to play it again, I would definitely just restart it because there's no way in hell I even know where I am in that game right now.
Yeah, if you're not using a notebook, it's like almost impossible to like play the game, I would say. But that said, like cool that you get to even use a notebook for a video game, like, and just another way to like engage in this format, I think is awesome.
But yeah, to keep the conversation going, I think we can take Yellow Taxi Goes Vroom off. I can't believe we keep saying the full name of the game at this point too.
It's such a good name though.
It is. It is.
Okay,
Let's move it on. Let's take it off.
Let's take it off. I think there's lots
coming
to
up on
discuss.
hour 4.
Hour 3, it looks like.
Oh, hour 3, my bad.
Yeah. I said this would be a short one, but this is the last one. Who gives a fuck? We'll talk as long as we can. Okay.
I don't want it to end.
All right. We came up with Astrobot, Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, Balatro, Helldivers 2, Metaphor, Refantasio as our 5. I think it's a very strong 5. I think like in virtue of that, I'm the only one who played Lorelei. It could be our number 5.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have nothing to add to say yay or nay to that.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah,
but just because I have thoughts on every other game, you know what I mean?
Lorelei. What did I put on my list? I think it's my number 5. No, it's my number 6. So like all these other games, I enjoyed more.
There you go.
But,
more.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Number 5.
Number 5's Lorelei. What is our number 4?
I would say number 4. And this is maybe a hot take. The 2, when I look at number 4, I'm feeling either Balatro or Metaphor.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I would not say Metaphor.
Metaphor Refantasio.
Thank you so much. I would not say Metaphor number 4 either.
Fair enough. It has not wowed me yet. I will say that's like my big thing with Metaphor is like, and I think part of it is that like I'm sitting here being like, man, I wish I was playing Persona 5. And I understand that it's not a Persona game.
Yeah.
But like and even like there's so much like, I don't know if you guys notice this, but like when I'm running in a dungeon and when I'm specifically sprinting in a dungeon, there's so much shit on the screen. There's these movement lines. There are these sparkling effects that are in the air. And I'm like, it's too much, guys. Tone, like, it just, I think
overstimulating.
It's just there. It's like hat on hat, or like it's like sprinkles on sprinkles. And that being said, I really like it. I think it deserves to be in the top 5. I just don't know how high I personally would put it. But I'm also only like 22 to 25 hours.
And as you know, JRPGs take 40 hours to get going. So
I mean, God, like for example, I beat a boss. So everyone's played the game. Has everyone beaten it?
I've beaten it.
Okay, so Ethan and I haven't beaten it. Ethan, do you know how far you are in? Like hours
I'm
wise?
approaching 50 hours.
Okay, so you're definitely past me. Like I beat a boss. I fought a boss the other day. It was a giant head. I was fighting its tongue. Its eyes were like a weak point and stuff like that. And I was just brute forcing it at first. I was just fighting the mouth and like hitting it and stuff like that.
You're
and
fighting a
healing it.
human?
I'm fighting a human. Oh. And so my character, my Mona surrogate is like, oh, go for the eyes. It keeps targeting us with its eyes. So I burst one of the eyes. And I was like, oh, that's cool. That's cool. And then I burst the other eye. And as soon as I burst that second eye, the first one re-heals. And I was like, well, fuck this. And so I just kept healing my guys and I just kept hitting its mouth and I beat it, no problem.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what was the point of that? Like, what was the point of that? Like, what was I supposed to feel satisfaction and what was it? It just felt like a long fight. And sometimes there'll be things where like, oh, the weaknesses, the system where like you do a weakness and it does extra damage to them and stuff like that. Sometimes it just doesn't, even though it says they're weak. And the character will be like, wait, I thought that was supposed to be their weakness. And you have to hear that like 60 times in a fight. Anyway.
So Angus brings up compelling points. The graphical onslaught when you're in the dungeon is a criticism that gets thrown around a lot. There are accessibility options you can use to disable those.
I might do that.
Because it was a very commonplace complaint. I think it's called speed lines for anyone who's like, oh my God, I hate that. You can go into the settings and disable speed lines.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
The other one about the boss fights, specifically against the humans, because that's where these like monstrous entities that have multiple weak points that you can exploit often come up. They were not all made equal. Some of them, you're like, there's like an actual game to this boss fight where I have to like break this weak point to get to the other weak point.
Yes.
Those parts.
I have to break the eggshell to see the mice sitting around the table. I love it. I think it's awesome. Oh, frogs, yeah.
Those parts, great. But then, as Angus said, this particular one with the monster with the eyes, you don't have to engage with it at all. In fact, I found if you manage to get both eyes disabled at the same time, it's actually worse for you.
It's also it's very clear who it's targeting, so you just guard with that person on their turn. Yeah. Like it's almost like maybe it's meant to be like a misdirect, but even then it's like what, like I don't know.
So to what Tom was saying earlier about you have to get a certain length into the game for it to sort of click. I agree with that because I was initially in the same boat as Angus where I'm like, this seems to have a worse combat system than Persona 5. I was missing baton pass. I was running the same issue Angus highlighted of like, why aren't weaknesses working on these specific days? Well, it turns out it's attributed to the weather. If it's bad weather, you don't get the weakness benefits anymore.
I see.
But every single one of this is a game. Sorry, I'm going to backtrack for a moment here. This is a game that rewards you for reading. More than any other JRPG I've ever played, it rewards you for reading. It has one of the most interesting secret systems in that you can go to information brokers and you can buy information about your upcoming challenges, and it doesn't feel like a waste of time. Every time I've gone to one of these information brokers, they've always had something that's like, yeah, this will probably come in handy, and it oftentimes is. So to that end, if you're playing Metaphor and it's not clicking for you, I just encourage you to maybe read a bit more
that is fair. Yeah.
To engage with the systems it's trying to present. Over time, as the combat was starting to click, I actually preferred that baton pass was not in the game. For those who aren't in the know, in Atlas RPGs, specifically Persona, baton pass is how exploiting a weakness allows you to then continue your series of attacks.
You still kind of do if you get a critical or you like the
but you can't freely move to the character you want to move to.
Yes.
You are inhibited by turn order, and I feel like that is a good limitation because it forces you to engage with an aspect of JRPGs not everyone does. Everyone probably knows about stat modifying effects in an RPG. Whether you use them or not, you're probably familiar with that. What I mean by this is you can take one of your characters and use one of their abilities to augment the strength or the defense or the agility of another character on your team. In Metaphor, it's almost essential that you use these.
Man, totally.
Yeah, it is.
You're right, and that fits in with the theme of the game, which is like literally
helping each other.
Yeah, it's like heroes don't do anything on their own.
And so you have to shift your point of view with this JRPG because everyone always says it's like Persona, but it really is not.
It's not. No, it's not.
It truly is not. So, and this is what I offer to anyone who's maybe taken a crack at the game and maybe it didn't click with them, is just remember that it is its own game. You have to engage with it on its terms. And you may still not like it, and that's totally fine. But if you are engaging with it, it's like, this isn't Persona and I don't like it, well, you're not giving the game its fair share, its fair credit.
Yeah.
That's a very fair argument, Matthew. And I think that's maybe what I need to do going back into it, because I don't want to give up on it. I want to keep playing it.
You should, yeah.
Because even like when I got the Gauntlet Runner, I was like, oh shit, this is really cool. Okay, I see where this, and like up until that point, I was kind of like, what is this? It's just the same shit over again. And then I was like, oh, okay, there's a bit more. And so I do want to give it the fair shake. So that's fair.
Like, if we're going to just compare really quickly, like on the record, I think I like the Persona world better. I like the music better than Metaphor, but like as
you'd
a
be
whole,
crazy to,
but like as a whole, I think Metaphor, like they really nail their story, I think. And I think I really enjoyed all of the characters that they presented in Metaphor for the most part. And I truly think their actual gameplay mechanics stuff in Metaphor is better than Persona, but it's building off of that. So
I do really like that any character in your party can be any archetype, and like you know, like even like I've got Hulkenberg and I want to make her a magical knight. Well, good thing I already had her getting a few levels in mage. I'll just get her up to 10, and then I do like that. So there's a lot to say. Again, I think it should be on the list. I just felt comfortable at 4, and maybe I'm less sure of that.
We had to talk about it anyways. So
what do we put at 4 then? If not Metaphor,
Ethan,
what
do
would
you
you guys put? Yeah,
I'm
Ethan,
thinking Balatro.
Oh, that's fair.
Helldivers 2, I think it goes to 3. That's what my opinion is.
Honestly, that's pretty fair. That's pretty fair.
I
Yeah,
could go
Balatro 4.
Yeah, I could go Balatro 4.
I'd live with that.
Balatro 4? Balatro 4?
Balatro 4. 4 of a kind. 4 of a kind.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry.
You know, it's good.
I'm sorry.
No. Mine was Balat 4. That didn't make any sense. I mean, we're at hour 3 of the podcast, so I'm getting a loopy here.
Quattro.
3,
Okay.
Helldivers 2 at 3.
I can live with that.
Wait, what
I think
else
it's
we have Astrobot and Metaphor.
And Metaphor. I think Helldivers 2 is a wonderful game, but there's a lot of if statements you need to hit to kind of get that. You got to be in the right mood. You got to
have friends.
You got to have friends. And like truly,
I don't have any.
Everyone's got to be free that night, you know? But once it clicks, boys, it can be something special. So yeah, no, I'm happy with Helldivers 2 at 3.
I think that was my argument against Barotrauma last year, because you guys were like saying it's so fun with friends, and I was just like, well, I don't have any friends.
Helldivers 2 is way better than Barotrauma, but Barotrauma is still a fun ass game. Another amazing LAN party game. But who does LAN parties anymore, you know?
And, you know, like we haven't really, we don't have to linger on this because I think Helldivers 2 should belong at 3, but it did take them like a good few months, understandably, to get it to a place where it's like just fun again. Because there's a period of time where not just like the game breaking for some people and stuff like that, but like the balance changes weren't good. The rollout was kind of like of war bonds was like, oh, you can buy this war bond, but none of this is actually really like, I don't want any of these things. But
that's fair.
That type of stuff. But like, I think they got it to a place that is actually good now. It just, you know, it had a bumpy ride for a while.
Every time feedback goes to Arrowhead, they seem to incorporate it.
They actually seem to listen.
Yeah, it's so refreshing. I truly wish I could give this game of the year just for the developers' interaction with the community. But then you have to incorporate gameplay and all that, and then, well. One thing I want to highlight is that, and you guys have already sort of circled it, is every time Arrowhead tries something, even if it doesn't land, they're not just going to drop it. One of the more recent milestone achievements the community had was the deployment of a space station. The space station was supposed to be a supporting system that players could pay access resources into to reap rewards while they're on missions. If this space station was stationed over a planet you're doing a mission on and you paid resources into it, it would automatically deploy stratagems for you. Super neat concept in theory. It was a friendly fire magnet. No one really knows how the coding worked for it, but like it would just like drop stratagems right on you and you get annihilated. And so everyone's like, hey, Arrowhead, this was a bit of a miss. You guys played it up that this was going to be this amazing game-changing concept, and it sucks. And Arrowhead's noted, we'll take another crack at it.
Maybe have it drop some vehicles, you know? Like that could be fun.
People were initially hesitant about the war bonds. Like, you guys are pumping out these war bonds, but they don't have quality items in them. Whereas, like, great, we'll do war bonds every other month now. And it's improved.
That's good.
Arrowhead was nerfing guns left, right, and center because they wanted the game to be hard. And the community's like, well, we just want to have fun. And then Arrowhead's like, noted, we'll make the game fun.
Yeah. Like
And-
assault rifles as a whole were basically unusable.
Yeah.
And then there was a patch, and now they're all fun to use.
Yeah.
Every gun is fun to use in
Fun
some
to
way.
use, and
Like
you
it's,
can.
yeah.
I think the one last thing we'll say about Helldivers 2, and we should move on, is that like we haven't mentioned that like there is like this overall objective as Helldivers, as like everyone who's playing the game and like this community, but it's just like this is your I don't know, your objective for the next 48 hours is to kill X amount of bugs as Helldivers.
To free a planet,
Exactly.
you know, that kind of
So
thing. Yeah.
Everybody who's playing the game is contributing to this larger, I don't know, in-game story thing. And then sometimes like Arrowhead would be like, hey, if you kill all these bugs or whatever and do it in the right amount of time, we're going to release a stratagem for you because in the world, you just freed the factory that has the mechs inside of it. And I think that's just like a cool way to, again, build this greater story for a game that doesn't really have much story, but there is something.
Did you see the event where Helldivers chose to save children in the game? In real life, they donated a bunch of money to a children's hospital.
I did not
So
see
it's
that. That's
basically
cool.
it's basically like you guys can get anti-tank mines, or you can go save fictional children and get nothing. And everyone's like, well, we got to go save the kids, and they did. And then they took like a X amount of however many kids were saved. Like it was like 5,000 or 6,000 people were saved in that mission. And they're like, okay, cool. We took that exact amount and we donated it to a charity, and it was awesome. Everyone was
cool.
like, fuck yeah, it was so cool. Anyway, number 3, fine by me.
That's what's number 2. Is it Metaphor?
I would say so,
Don't,
but
so I don't know.
Ethan, let's go. Let's go.
I have been changing my opinion about what number 1 is for me. If you asked me maybe a month ago, I would have said Astrobot hands down. Metaphor has been really changing my opinion on like what I would consider game of the year.
Let's hear it.
I think where you're at, Angus, is I was kind of actually at the same time kind of being like, okay, I get it. Like this is a JRPG, you know, it's doing the normal JRPG stuff, and I can't. I'll preface this too by saying this is my first Atlas RPG that I'm actually playing.
Oh, interesting.
So I don't have any. I'm not coming into this with any sort of preconceived idea. Well, the idea of an Atlas RPG is you have social links and you upgrade those outside of combat and you do that kind of extra stuff. But at around that point, like 20, 25 hours, and it was kind of slowing down for me. And I was thinking like, I'm not really jumping in. I'm not really like super engaged to come back to this or anything like that. And then I kind of just like pushed through it a little bit. And after the point, I think I'm kind of around where you were at. I'm like, okay, no, there's something that's clicking here. There's like, I'm unlocking more different archetypes. I'm upgrading them to like the master level. So now it's like every time I'm in combat and those archetypes I have level up to a point, I now get bonus XP that I can use on anyone's archetypes to level them up and stuff like that. So that's the really cool part for me. That I'm like, okay, so if I master these archetypes, I can now produce items that will help master these other archetypes, which helps master these other archetypes, and I get more and more XP, and then that helps to expand the gameplay and expand my choices for the gameplay too. Like Matthew was saying, the idea of status ailments, I had no like desire. I'm like, oh, I'll kill these faster than they can kill me. That was the mantra I had. There's a certain point in the game where it's like shit hits you really fucking hard. It's like almost like early mid game that starts to happen. I'm like, I have to think differently here. And I got an archetype that really helps to boost my party's defense. And that started opening up different avenues of gameplay for me. So that was what was really interesting. And even before any of this, I was really into the idea of tinkering with what archetypes, what party makeup did I want to have. I was doing like brawler, healer, mage for a little while, and switching it out to doing these different things. And it seems like it is made to be a lot more experimental and less like, okay, everyone does this one thing and you're going to do that run it for the whole game and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's fair.
And comparing it to Astrobot, it's sort of like this weird graph where Astrobot is super fun, like right away for me, and it continued to be fun for the whole time. Metaphor kind of started off slower. It has a really good onboarding, so it has lots of systems, but I feel like it's really good and really eases you into it and stuff. And it just kind of started going up, and it's kind of past that point for me right now, where I'm thinking about Metaphor. I want to go back to it. Like I said before the podcast, I woke up early to play more Metaphor before coming onto this podcast today. I haven't really thought about Astrobot after I finished it. Maybe that's because I had other games to play. I don't know. But Astrobot is fantastic, and if it makes number 1, I'm fine with that. But for me, I just want to make that argument for Metaphor actually maybe topping Astrobot this year. But
I think that's a pretty solid argument. The only thing I would say is like, yeah, I'm still into Metaphor, and yeah, I think I'm still in that slow point, 20 hours in. I have had to physically be like, and this happened a couple of years ago with like the second God of War remake, where I was like, God, I really should sit down and play that. And it started to feel like a bit of a chore, whereas I was excited to get home from work and play Astrobot. You know what I mean? And I don't know what that means for everybody else, but I certainly would still give the edge to Astrobot. And it sucks that we're just keep picking the same game as the Game Awards. It really does. But like, God, Astrobot is such a
It's because Jeff
fucking
Keighley's
wonderful-
watching and listening right now. That's
he's
why.
got a gun to my head just off camera, and he's still crying. But I felt like rewarded for being like a Sony fan. I know that's weird. I feel bad that it's a console exclusive, and Xbox players get hosed again. They don't get to play one of the best platformers all year. I don't know. I don't know.
You
I'd
wouldn't
still
be
give the
able,
edge.
that's the thing about Astrobot is you would lose so much of it if you don't get to play it like on the DualSense controller, right? Like it's built for it. Like if you got to play it on like a regular Xbox controller, you couldn't do it. You couldn't
You
do
gotta
it.
blow on the thing to do the little wheel.
So
Yeah.
going
What
back
about
to
you
what
guys? Yeah.
Ethan was saying about like the sort of line chart of excitement for the game. I agree with what you were saying, Ethan. Astrobot was like a slam dunk right from go, and it's consistently fun throughout its experience. Metaphor is a bit of a slower windup, but Metaphor surpasses in fun. It eventually got to the point, Angus, as you were saying, like I was excited to get home and play more Metaphor. I was excited for my kids to go to bed so that I could have fun in my life. No,
You're whipping out
I
the
play
clone form.
Astrobot with my daughter every night. We have fun. The big thing for me, though, and I alluded to this earlier, was that Astrobot to me did not advance platforming as a genre. It was a solid platformer, don't get me wrong. It nailed what it was trying to do. But every level, I had to approach that level on Astrobot's terms. If you look at some of the other platformers that exist out there, you can approach them with your own style. Super Mario Odyssey is probably the best example I can use, but the amount of freedom of movement in that game is just insanity. You can throw your hat at any enemy you want. Each of those enemies allows you to go do a thing. Mario, without any of those enemies involved, has his own kit that allows him to move in so many different ways. Whereas with Astrobot, you have his jump, his hover, and you have whatever power-up you might get for that level if there's a power-up that level. Fun, absolutely fun, but what am I doing there to, sort of change up the platforming experience, I guess is what I'm getting at. Metaphor, on the other hand, was a refreshing JRPG in that it had elements I was familiar with, right? It is an Atlas RPG. There are things there that are reminiscent of other Atlas RPGs, but it was different enough that it did not feel like a slog where, you know what, I'll bring up another Atlas RPG that was released this year, Persona 3 Reload. By the midpoint of Persona 3 Reload, it is a slog. You are fighting the same enemies you've seen throughout the entire game, going through the same move combos, using baton pass to line up the same combos, to knock all the enemies out, to get an all-out attack, to kill them, to then move on to the next enemy to continue the grind. Metaphor, once you get past a certain strength level, you just whack your way through the enemies. You're doing a grind that's a little bit more interactive. It's a little bit quicker, faster. You don't feel like it's a slog. It was refreshing. There was no bad social link to engage with this time. Playing Persona 5, Haru who? I'm sure people here is like, what is he even talking about Haru?
I always did her last, yes.
Yeah, but in Metaphor, I cannot think of a single social link where I'm like, oh, I can't believe I have to go talk to this guy again. Like they all had fun
I also
stories.
liked in the social links in Metaphor that like if you chose a worse option, it just gives you less mag, and mag in this game is what you're able to like get abilities from other archetypes to put on your current archetype. And in Persona, if you mess it up, then you just wasted a day and you have to talk to this person again, and it's a bit of a thing.
Sounds like people might be leaning more towards Metaphor. The one
I'm
thing
still
I do,
Team Astrobot, to be honest.
so the Astrobot boss fights are all fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
The Astrobot levels are all unique and have great different vibes to them. I don't think I could point out the difference between the first, like the mausoleum, and then the under the castle. that I just did in Metaphor are essentially the same. It's
That's
hard
a very
to tell.
fair point.
It's hard to tell because there's shit on the screen that's blocking you from actually seeing. I will give, I'm surprised I didn't put it together that all the enemies are like Hieronymus Bosch paintings. I hadn't really because they looked like, I'm not a big art guy, so I didn't have that name ready to go. But like I was like, fuck, I feel like I've seen this like weird teapot monster or this fish with legs, Okay. I think they're unique. I don't know how fun they are to look at. I don't know.
Atlas games, they always have weird fucking enemies.
I don't know. I think the personas in Persona look fucking cool as hell. A lot of
the
them,
enemies
some of them
look
are
kind of fucked up too in Persona.
but the enemies are the personas. But anyway,
And Persona 5 at least.
sorry, that's true. And I think in Shin Megami, but I either way, I think beyond just innovating gameplay, I think there's a lot of style points that should go to Astropod.
Angus raises an interesting point, and Tung, you having completed the game, you can probably agree with this. The recycling of environments in late game Metaphor is at times egregious. There's a very late game dungeon which is advertised as taking place in a sky city.
Yeah.
It is a city in the sky.
No windows?
And it's supposed to be like a temple of the world before the world, like it's supposed to be like this big thing. And you go there, not only do you not see the sky ever, you are in the same dungeon from like the first dungeon of the entire game. It is the same recycled environment. I was bummed out. Legitimately, I was bummed. I'm like, oh, this sucks. And it helped that I was already over leveled for the area, so I just blew through it, got my gear, and got out. But if you had to go through that and actually fight the monsters, going into combat each time and going through the more lengthy combat systems, I don't know. I probably would have quit out of that dungeon. Just like a complete waste of time.
So what are we thinking then? Like, so Astrobot versus Metaphor, I finished both games. I think like I would just slightly do Astrobot more. It just brought me more joy in the year. And I think it's just a much more focused experience, and it went in, it came out. I do agree with the whole exponential rise of Metaphor, which is like, I think what a good JRPG should do.
Totally.
Like, you know what I mean? Like it always kind of starts off slow and then it like kind of like skyrockets later. I feel for me, like it did that for me. And then like it kind of went down a little bit at the end for Metaphor for me. Cause it maybe, I'm not sure about you, Matthew, but I feel like the last month in Metaphor was kind of like, I don't know. I don't want to spoil anything. The
last month to me was a lot of fun, but it gave me the opportunity to do everything.
Exactly. Yeah. But I think the power-ups in Astrobot are all good. Like your frog hands, your dog rocket, your chicken rocket, your monkey hands, your sponge. Like there's just so much joy in Astrobot, and it like kind of distills the gaming experience into like this perfect encapsulation of a thing. But like, yeah, I'm a big Mario fan, so like of course it's gonna like resonate with me a little bit more.
I feel comfortable now that I've had a chance to talk it out and fully put my thoughts into words. I agree that Astrobot probably edges out Metaphor. That all said, Metaphor with a slightly larger budget and like real backing behind it from the developers, it could be a contender to like edge out Persona in the future.
I can see that for sure.
It's awesome. I think
like Metaphor 2 Fantasio is going to be fucking awesome.
So while we're on that, I was throwing out all these big words earlier. Esperanto is a language from ye old times, which was meant to be a global communication standard. Was the idea behind it, to facilitate communication between diverse peoples, which is kind of a recurring theme within Metaphor. The Fantasio part is Esperanto. If I remember the reference I read correctly, it literally means like Metaphor, a king's fantasy.
Cool. That is cool.
And then Angus brought up, sorry, I have already forgotten the artist.
Hieronymus Bosch. Yeah.
Anyone who's ever read Berserk,
yes,
is very familiar with
Ethan's wearing
these
a
artistic
Berserk shirt.
Yeah,
I didn't even notice.
So all of the stuff that happens after the Golden Age, where like they bring up ley lines and the wizards come out and they go into the forest. Ethan's nodding his head; he gets it. That's all inspired by Bosch. And once again, Metaphor just sort of like took from the same playbook as Kentaro. Was it Kentaro Miura? Is the guy's name? Took from the same playbook as Kentaro, and just like it's such a acid trippy art style. which resonates with me. That
I
I'll say.
appreciate that it looks different. I really do give it points for that.
If I have to do one
I'm
more
an
knock
Astrobot.
against Metaphor very quickly, Luis is a terrible villain name.
Luis.
It's two things. The main character looks like a wiener, and Luis is just a bad villain name. Oh, evil
That's
Luis.
such a good villain.
He's such a good
Oh
villain.
my God.
The story of Metaphor is actually awesome, and
I need to keep playing it because everyone keeps telling me how good the story is, and it feels super basic at the point I'm at.
sure, yeah.
Like it feels like it's like prejudice is bad and people are sad and they want it to be better. And I was like, okay, cool.
They
But it's like
eventually
20
get
hours out
into
so
the
far.
point of like conflicting ideologies,
Okay,
and that's
good.
when it opens up because you're
I
like, well,
can't
what
wait.
is Luis's ideology?
Yeah,
And it
exactly.
is
All right.
bonkers.
I think
Okay.
we have it. I think. Should we do Metaphor 2 and Astrobot 1? I honestly would have been fine with either way, but I think at this point we have to make a decision.
I'd be okay with either. My heart tells me Astro 1.
Then let's do that.
I think
Astro 1.
I think we all really love Astro, so I think that's number one.
Yeah, I adore Astrobot. I think it's fucking
And
awesome.
who knows? Maybe you'll add an addendum here where I'm like, I just finished Metaphor and it's changed my life. Not that Astrobot changed my life.
I'm
but,
no
you know.
longer a racist.
Yeah, Angus said
I learned it's bad.
Oh my god.
The first stat I improved was tolerance. I was like, let's get this up quick. I don't want to be that guy.
The fucking book that they keep referring to through
Oh, man.
Metaphor. It's just like, okay, we get it. In this book, everything's good.
Like it's perfect. There's one tribe.
And everyone's like, let me read that book. Everything's good. It's like, okay.
When they introduced the villains as humans, I did roll
Yeah.
my eyes. I'm like, oh, okay.
For sure. Can I say one thing about Astrobot? Sorry.
Please.
I just like I didn't say too much about it, but there's one thing that I really appreciate about Astrobot. It might just be since it seems to be coming up more often now. It's that Astrobot, for me, it's really cool to see a great platformer, but to have it not be restricted by a rule set yet. You know, where Mario, it's like, okay, Mario, you have, you know, you going into a Mario game, you kind of know the aesthetic it's going to have. You know what the abilities you're going to have, and you know kind of pretty similar, like how it's going to run and stuff like that. With Astrobot, it feels like they have a whole world to play with, like going into different games and stuff like that. And even outside of that, just like some of those island levels, the pirate levels, the like casino level, they could just do whatever now, it feels like.
I did not expect the Loco Roco
Yeah.
level. I was like, oh wow, okay.
Yeah, I wonder what the only thing, like I've heard this talked about before with Astrobot, but I wonder if they're able to get away from just being, because like this game is just celebration of PlayStation, right? Like, and same with Astro's Playroom and stuff like that. Like you're riding on a PlayStation controller, you're building a PS5, you're getting the parts for a PS5, and like all of your Astrobot friends are all like Sony or like they've been on a PlayStation before, which I think is pretty awesome. And I wonder if they're able to keep doing that through the next Astrobot, or if that's going to be like, okay, we get it.
I think it's gonna be like Astro Kart Racing or something. I personally would love to see them take another crack at the like mascot fighter genre and have like Astrobot be like the base character, like the Mario of Smash Bros. Of just like figure out what his moveset is and then build off from that. But who knows?
Astrobot Mario Party.
Astrobot Killzone.
Fuck my idea. That's the one.
That's the one. That's it right there.
All right. We fucking did it. Number 5 for our final Game of the Year episode in Ranked. Number 5, Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. Number 4, Balatro. Number 3, Helldivers 2. Number 2, Metaphor Rifantasio. And number 1, Astrobot. Congratulations, Astrobot. And congratulations to our Game of the Year, which is the Game of the Year for pretty much everyone.
Pretty much everybody.
But it deserves it. I think it's an amazing game.
It's like Elden Ring all over again.
Yeah, that's right.
Baldur's Gate 3.
Oh my god.
Hades.
Wow.
Yeah.
Before-
Hades at least felt a little original that year. We're like, ooh.
Okay.
But no, you're right. You're right. Yeah.
Before we wrap things up, there's just a few other exercises that I want to go through really quickly, and we'll do honorable mentions. I think I would love to hear if you made a list for yourself, a top 5 or a top 10. I would love to hear it. So let's start with Ethan.
Yeah. So my top 5 this year is at number 5. It's a game called Nine Souls. That's the Metroidvania I was really into this year.
But it was
beautiful 2D. Yeah, beautiful 2D graphics. Sekiro like combat, Hollow Knight worship, basically. Number 4 was Yellow Taxi Goes Vroom. Number 3 for me was Astrobot. 2 is Metaphor, and then number 1 was Deadlock. And I'm kind of like thinking about Deadlock in the future, and I think that game's going to be really, really sick. And fuck you, it's my list.
You heard it here first, everyone.
Yeah.
Deadlock's
Fuck you,
gonna be
it's his
sick.
That's going to be a heavy hitter.
Yeah.
I'll say honorable mentions. I got to play the 2XKO Alpha Lab, which was the League of Legends fighting game. I got into that and played that. I'm really looking forward to that. That's coming out this year. Sad not going to be able to talk about it. But moving on, another honorable mention, Tekken 8. That was cool. I don't know if 3D fighters are exactly my cup of tea, but like that game is still super, super fun.
Oh, is it a 3D fighter? Like you're moving through a 3D plane in Tekken?
Oh, yeah,
I
buddy.
didn't know that.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Then Rivals of Aether 2, it's a platform fighter, which is pretty cool. Prince of Persia Lost Crown, and Marvel Rivals, best game I barely played this year.
Yeah, fair.
Surprisingly good.
Surprisingly good. All right, Matthew, let's hear
Come back to me.
Okay, Angus.
I have my list of 10 that I threw together. Coming in at number 10, Zenless Zone Zero. It's a gacha game.
Cool.
I really like the vibe and like the aesthetic, and the gameplay is pretty fun. It's hard to recommend though if you're someone who's like susceptible to in-app purchases. It really tries to get that FOMO, but I had a good time with it. Marvel Rivals, number 9.
Wow.
Number 8, Path of Exile 2. Very fun.
Cool.
Really liking
Is
it.
that out now?
No, it's early access.
Early access.
I bought into the early access and playing it on console.
Cool.
It's fun. Number 7, Metaphor Refantasio. Number 6, Tekken 8. Loved it. That was in the running for my last nomination. Really like Tekken 8. The boss fight of it is fucking hilariously awesome. And if you're like a fan of the series, it really rewards you for knowing a certain character's fighting style and how it has changed across all the games. That was number 6, right? Number 5 is V Rising. Number 4, Space Marine 2. I was going to nominate this, but I figured it was too similar to Helldivers 2. I love Space Marine 2. In the last year and a half, 2 years, I have cranked through like 20 plus 40K audiobooks. I love it. Space Marine 2 is a fucking love letter to fans of the game, to fans of that world, and it doesn't dumb it down for anyone coming in. People can come in and they can figure it out on their own, and it's a fun game. It's a fun game. I really like it. Number 3, Helldivers 2. Number 2, Balatro. And number 1, Astrobot. I only have 2 honorable mentions. The first being Black Myth Wukong. I think a very fun, interesting game with a cool aesthetic. Very good. Didn't make my top 10. And then the other was another one Leslie Cherapy recommended to me, UFO 50. That is an indie game that you buy it, and then there are 50 games inside of it. Some of them genuinely very bad, and some of them genuinely very, very good. That's it.
All right. That's a good list. Matthew?
I'm ready. All right. Starting in at number 10 is Dragon's Dogma 2. Love myself a good, classic RPG. It's just like it is not a finished game. They sold it as a finished game, but it's quite obvious there's a lot of cut content. If you can reconcile that, go get it. Elden Ring Shadows of the Erdtree at number 9. Mario Party Jamboree at number 8. I've been playing that with my wife a lot.
Nice.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah, all the mini games too are a lot of fun. Like even if you don't play the actual Mario Party part, like they just got a lot of side content.
Dude, pro
which is
rules.
enjoyable.
They got pro rules now in Mario.
Pro rules are a lifesaver. But I'm just talking like they got this like rhythm game one.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. And Space Marine 2 at number 7. Animal Well at number 6. Balatro number 5. Helldivers 2 at number 4. Factorio Space Age at number 3. Astrobot number 2. And Metaphor at number 1.
Metaphor what? Sorry?
Metaphor Refantasio.
Thank you so much.
Metaphor King's Fantasy if you're fluent in Esperanto like I am.
All right. And finally for myself, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth at number 10. I feel like I had to put that one on because I played all of it and I love Final Fantasy VII so much, but like I won't belabor the point. It has pacing problems up the wazoo.
Oh my God. It's fun though. It's good. It's a good game.
It's just
wild.
It's too much. Number 9, Paper Mario in the Thousand Year Door remake. I really enjoyed that game.
I'm looking forward to it.
Number 8, Thank Goodness You're Here.
Is it good?
It's fucking awesome.
Word. Okay.
I didn't get to finish it. It's a very short game. It's like, I don't know. I think it's 2.5 to 3 hours long. I might be put like an hour and a half into it. It is so fun. You just run around as a little guy and you're slapping shit and it's just a bunch of British humor. It's very fun. Number 7, Neva. Neva.
Oh, is it Neva?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. They
shit.
say it a lot
Sorry.
in the game.
Neva.
Ethan, did you end up playing all of it? You didn't play it all, Ethan? I know we bought it together, but
Yeah, no, I'm like an hour into it, and it says I'm 25% done the game. So
yeah, it's like 4 hours. It's good. It's
Yeah.
good. Neva's number 7. Number 6, Lorelei. Number 5, Balatro. Number 4, Prince of Persia. Number 3, Helldivers 2. Number 2, Metaphor Refantasio. And number 1, Astrobot. Honorable mentions to Marvel Rivals as well. Black Myth Wukong. And Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, which is, I wish it was better, but it is a cool proof of concept kind of thing. And that is it for our honorable mentions. Now, the final activity, which I don't want to take too long on, but I just want to see, because it's the final episode, I want to just read our years that we have created over the years, just to remind the audience of all the work that we've done, all the work. But seriously, we did a lot of gaming and we spent a lot of time crafting these lists. Just one more shout out to all the lists that we made in the past. And then maybe if we have a favorite. So 2017, our list was number 5, South Park, Fractured But Whole. 4, Player Unknown's Battleground, PUBG. Number 3, Super Mario Odyssey. Number 2, Cuphead. And number 1, Breath of the Wild. In 2018, our number 5 was Dragon Ball Fighter Z. 4, Red Dead Redemption 2. Number 3, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. 2, Marvel's Spider-Man. 1, God of War. In 2019, our 5 was Apex Legends, 4, Monster Hunter World Iceborne, 3, Outer Wilds, 2, Devil May Cry 5, 1, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. In 2020, number 5, Doom Eternal, 4, Animal Crossing New Horizons, 3, Last of Us Part 2, 2, Final Fantasy VII Remake, 1, Hades. 2021, Returnal is at number 5. Number 4, Guilty Gear Strive. 3, Metroid Dread. 2, It Takes Two. 1, Inscription. In 2022, number 5 was Hard Space Shipbreaker. 4, God of War Ragnarok. 3, Marvel Snap. 2, Vampire Survivors. And 1, Elden Ring. 2023, Barrow Trauma at number 5, 4, Super Mario Brothers Wonder, 3, Remnant 2, 2, Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, 1, Baldur's Gate 3, and then finally, our 5 was Lorelei, 4, Balatro, 3, Helldivers 2, 2, Metaphor, and 1, Astrobot for 2024. We made a fuck ton of lists over the years. I'm very proud of all of this. This is awesome.
8 years, man. That's
8
crazy.
years. That's so crazy. We should have done 10. We should have done 10. But I am tired.
That's okay. You've earned a long rest.
I've earned a rest. We've all earned
These
a
are
rest.
crazy. These are crazy years. Like, man.
Yeah. And
I think our bravest year was 2021. That's a pretty brave year.
so with that, I've read all of them. We don't have to rank them because we've already done a lot of ranking. But if we had to choose a favorite year that we have, ranked over the years of our favorite games, what do you think the best year was?
I could start us off.
Yeah.
2019, as I'm just sort of looking at our top 5, 2019 stands out to me because it does have 2 probably my favorite games, being Monster Hunter World Iceborne and Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. So I would put that forward as probably my favorite year, being 2019.
Okay. Angus, Ethan, anything stand out to you?
It's hard for me to top 2018. I mean, I didn't play
Hell of a
Dragon Ball
year.
FighterZ, but I've seen a lot of gameplay from it. It looks fucking sick. Red Dead Redemption 2, I replayed this past year and absolutely loved it. Super Smash Bros. Was fucking awesome. Marvel Spider-Man was genuinely moved me to tears, and God of War was pretty good.
Yeah.
That's a solid. If I had to go back and play all 5 of the games in one year, it would be hard not to pick 2018 for me. That's a very single player heavy year, though. I guess not.
I'll just go on top of that. My favorite year from the years that we've, at a quick glance, a terrible year for the world, but a great year for games is 2020. Doom Eternal, Animal Crossing New Horizons, was life-changing. Final Fantasy VII Remake. I loved Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is why I was looking forward to Rebirth so much. And ending it with Hades, Hades.
Oh,
holy
Yeah.
shit. I want
So
Hades
good.
2 so badly, and I know I can play it now, but I'm going to wait for 1.0, obviously. So, Ethan, what about you?
Yeah, I think out of all these, I'm thinking 2023, honestly. Power Trauma, I never played it, but I know Angus and Matthew really loved it. Super Mario Bros. Wonder was great. I know Remnant 2 got a lot of accolades. Follow up to Breath of the Wild, which is amazing. So it's kind of just more Breath of the Wild, which is sick. And Baldur's Gate 3, actually, I think out of all of these years, I think Baldur's Gate 3 is the one that stands out the highest for
Out of
me
all the
as
number ones?
as the number one game of all these number one game lists.
I can see it.
would probably agree with you if Hades wasn't there. I really,
That's fair.
really,
That's
really
like
Hades.
the
But
two.
they're so strong. But Baldur's Gate 3 is incredible.
As long as we can agree, Elden Ring does not belong as the number one. No.
Very good game. Very good game.
Can I say, I think the weakest year, surprisingly, is 2017. I'm looking at that list. It's like, okay.
I agree.
Why is
those
South
years.
Park on there, dude? It
I
should have
agree.
been
I don't
Persona. It should have been Divinity
Yeah.
Original Sin. It should have been
yeah.
Hollow Knight.
we
Like
were just figuring it out.
Wait, Hollow Knight was in 2017?
Hollow Knight was
Dude,
2017.
yeah, we didn't know anything back then.
I'll give kudos to Cuphead, though. Cuphead's fucking sick.
Sure.
Yeah.
And Mario Odyssey.
Super Mario Odyssey, yeah.
And I mean, Breath of the Wild, sure, if that's your thing.
Yeah, and we didn't have Angus and Matthew on the podcast yet,
I
so
know,
we had no
yeah.
idea what we were doing, Ethan.
Young pups.
I cannot believe PUBG got on there. What the fuck?
It was
Isn't that
very
Ethan?
popular.
It was. I mean, it started. It
It's-
did start the battle royale thing.
Yeah.
So,
You know, fair
And
enough.
then-
At the time, it probably would have been an achievement.
And
Just
now
looking
it's
back.
ended. Yeah, they've
Yeah.
done
Yeah.
enough battle royales. They're like, let's not do any more of those.
yeah, Apex blows it out of the water.
And finally, I would just like to, because this is our final game of the year, I liked, and we always talk about this at the end of every episode for game of the year, is what are you looking forward to in the year of 2025 in gaming? And for yourself personally, like for myself, I love playing the most up-to-date games. That's kind of how I always have been, but I can't tell if it's because of this podcast or if I'm just built that way. I feel like I'll still end up doing that. But for myself, I'm very much looking forward to just playing any game I want. And then, like, I'm looking forward to like what a good dad game is, honestly. And I've been playing a lot of the PlayStation Portal, a device that I kind of bought on a whim, but now it's actually working quite well for me to be able to like quickly access my PlayStation games wherever I want in the house or when I'm traveling. But in terms of things I'm looking forward to in 2025 in gaming, the Switch 2, can't wait to see what that's all about. Maybe we'll get a new Mario Kart or Mario 3D platformer. Who knows? I'm looking forward to Hades 2. And this is the year that I play Cyberpunk finally.
Oh, man.
This is it.
You're in for a treat.
I bought it over the Christmas break, and I'm waiting to play it after I finish. Thank goodness you're here because it's amazing.
Of course.
How about you guys?
There's a ton I'm looking forward to. Obviously, Monster Hunter Wilds, Civ 7. My Valentine's Day plans are to play Civ 7 with my wife. God, that's cute, isn't it? Expedition 33 or whatever
yeah.
it's called.
Yeah.
Looks kind of cool.
Looks cool.
It's like an RPG. Obviously, GTA 6, Death Stranding 2, Skate, all sorts of shit. There's so much stuff that could potentially come out next year and be amazing.
Matthew, Ethan?
Angus already sort of named a lot of my big ones,
Oh, I'm
but
sorry.
I'll regurgitate. Monster Hunter Wilds is
yeah.
looking so good. Civ 7, I love the Civ games, and I'm sure this won't be any different. I'm looking forward to it with optimism, this new Elden Ring Battle Royale cooperative experience.
Night Rain?
Night Rain, thank you. The description for it appeals to me because it was described as a battle royale or collaborative battle royale with Monster Hunter elements, and I'm like, well, those are some good buzzwords.
Yeah.
Goodbye, family.
Yeah.
That's like Taylor designed for you.
Yeah.
It's just like,
Hey. With Factorio, so Factorio, the actual game, was released in 2024, but it's got a very active modding community. So I'm very interested to see what new mods are put out with this new Space Age expansion, because I'm sure it will be great. And I'm fairly certain Cuphead 2 is coming out
What?
soon.
oh,
That's a
I didn't
thing?
realize that.
Wow.
I could have sworn I saw something about Cuphead 2. Hold on, let me see if I'm
I
talking
hope
about
so.
this.
I would love to play more Cuphead.
Me too. I just took so long to get the DLC.
No,
done.
I'm completing it with the DLC. Sorry, that's on me.
You thinking of Silk Song?
That's exactly what I'm
That's
thinking
never
of.
Oh, come please.
I think we've been talking about looking forward to Silk Song for years now. It's like, I don't even want to say it because who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, those are the big ones that immediately come to mind. But as with all things in gaming, there's the new Ghost of Tsushima coming out soon.
Yotei.
Is it 2020?
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. Ethan?
I'm looking forward to, like you, Tuong, maybe not being up on all of the latest stuff, maybe actually enjoying other people playing it, like watching people play that stuff, and I can like chill out and relax, wait till it comes on a sale or something like that. I don't have to buy it right away.
Yeah.
But 2XKO, that's the game I'm looking forward to the most this coming year. The League of Legends fighting game, I got the alpha of it. I played it a bit. It looks very promising. I'm hoping that with Riot behind it, it can really catapult maybe fighting games to a bigger scale than it ever has. So
Excellent. Excellent. Well, that's it for our Game of the Year episode. Angus, Matthew, Ethan, thank you as always for joining me on the Game of the Year episodes. I honestly, this is always one of my favorite episodes to do. I think it is for you guys too, probably. But like, you know, you could tell how much we love this thing because we've been talking for almost 4 hours. And like, I feel like at the same time, we've said a lot and not enough, you know, like I could talk about this stuff for ages and ages. And it's been quite a joy and a pleasure and honor to be doing all this podcasting and talking about games with you guys. Cause I love talking games.
Here's an idea. What about in a year? The 4 of us get together, we talk about games again, but we don't record.
We don't record it, but where's the drama?
We still make a list. We just don't tell anyone.
I don't know if I want to hang out with anybody if I can't turn it into content.
Just being like a genuine connection, nothing performative.
No.
That doesn't.
It sounds yucky.
We could definitely talk about games next year offline for sure. But yeah. Angus, Matthew, Ethan, do you have anything to plug for the people at home at all? Just open invitation before we get going.
Matthew and I host a podcast called Heroes Don't Do Paperwork. It's improv. It's superheroes, and it's a funny podcast that we do here on the Pod Cavern. Go check it out.
Amazing. Ethan, anything going on with you?
I don't got shit, man. I'm just gonna hang out.
Yeah, no problem. Read Berserk, maybe.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Read Berserk.
Read Berserk.
I actually am getting back into like comics. I got a whole bunch of over the break, bunch of like manga, comic books, got an iPad for drawing and stuff like that. So I'm going to creatively explore that stuff. So
Hell yeah, man.
Nice.
Love it. I love
Everyone should read Berserk though.
yeah.
Like
For real.
I've read the
Take it-
Golden Age arc like 2 or 3 times now.
It's so
I
good.
got to keep going after that though. You know, it's tough. Takes a lot out of you.
I should do it too. Well, I think that's it for us. For myself, you can find the rest of the shows in the Pod Cavern at www.podcavern.com. Check out all the shows in there. Like, subscribe, rate, review, and share with all your friends. And honestly, play some video games. Video games are pretty fucking cool.
Yeah.
There's amazing stuff from 2024 and from 23, 22, 21, 20. Like we've talked about all these games, and I think all of our opinions definitely have not changed over the years. Our list is final.
Immutable.
Yeah.
Exactly. And with that, I have one more word to share with all of you, and that is Refantasio.
Refantasio.
Bye, everyone.